when I find out whether or not it's connected to the right thing. Hello, Chatfish, and welcome to another stream. Today we're going to be doing something a bit different, a bit more, I guess, exciting maybe for me, but we're going to be talking about Mixer's Legends of Terrestria with our lead programmer, and only programmer, Robin, and animator.
Hello.
Yep. And so we're going to be basically just sort of going through the status of the combat prototype that Robin's been working on. If those who watch Robin stream, you probably already super aware of what's happening and what's being done. But yeah, we're just going to go through this. This is a very, very, I would say, prototype-y build, wouldn't you? Like, it's not alpha, it's prototype.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been building, like, the back-end stuff to make it even function. So, yeah.
Now,
it's very, very early.
If Chatfish have questions, feel free to ask questions. I will be mostly focusing on looking at the chats. I just need to pop out all of them because they just crashed. Wonderful. Hold on, Rumble froze as well. My Google Chrome does this sometimes. There we go. That's refreshed. And last chat that broke was Twitch. Refreshing you, so you're back in working order. There we go. All right, they're all functioning again. Perfect, perfect. And then remove top chat to live chat. Boop. There we go. So if you have questions about anything about the build or mechanics or design philosophy, feel free to ask them. Some questions we may not be able to fully answer because we are in a prototyping stage, or if it's like lore related, we might not be able to answer, but we will address each one of them. So feel free to ask them and I will read them. But we're going to also just kind of talk about the state of the build. Now, I'm going to answer some questions that came in already so that we're on top of this. So first, G Mark 1 asks, is this game an RPG or a strategy game? It's both. It's basically, when we talked about it, it's sort of like a JRPG tactics game, I guess you could say, in terms of like its overall design and philosophy. Like, it isn't quite 100% that, but it's kind of like a, amalgamation of that. It's got turn-based tactics, you control multiple characters, and that's kind of the general gist of it. And yeah, you move around. It's not like, your standard JRPG combat where you have a party and then you fight. It's a bit more westernized in the sense that you move around a map and there's a lot of tactical elements there. And Brett's been a member for 33 months. Thank you for the long-term support. Chat's like, I'm scared.
F's in chat for F, press it.
Yep, F's in chat for F, press it. Oh, God, yeah. Good, just start spamming F. That's a wonderful thing to spam, so I don't think the stream's freezing or anything. But yeah. So, Robin, feel free to, so a bit like Fire Emblem. I mean, it's a comparison. It's been so long since I played Fire Emblem, I can't quite remember. I don't know about you, Robin.
I would say that,
like, presentation,
more like
maybe
more like the older Fire Emblems. I don't really know exactly how they are nowadays, but if you look at like the GBA Fire Emblems, like Fire Emblem 7 or whatnot, it's got more of that, but it's still, we're trying to do a lot more in general. So it's it's Fire Emblem-esque, it's Final Fantasy Tactics-esque, that direction at least.
Also, just gonna move the model out of the way because I'm kind of obscuring actual information here, because yeah, there's a slew of buttons on the left hand side. Now bear in mind that a lot of this is very placeholder, mind you, but
all of it is placeholder pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not representative of final product. It's good to say that so that people are aware of that. But yeah, this is a prototype, not an alpha, not a beta, a prototype. Very different.
Everything that I'm making right now is first and foremost just to get it working, right? Like that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to make things function, and then we can use that to, like, within the team, we can take a look at like how things feel, and the ideas feel a little bit more concrete and easy to understand when you can actually see them play out in real time. Right?
Yes, this is very much a fluidic state. While we do have a more or less design that we are following, like implementing mechanics such as like the stability mechanic, which we'll talk about in a bit here, or various other things like the micro squares or whatever, right? The big thing here is that a lot of it is focused on testing its application, because now we're taking it from paper, which again, we finished these designs, quite a while ago, and because we only have one programmer, Robin's been implementing each mechanic, from spell casting to movement to how the interiors of buildings worked, to recently the stability mechanic and the concept that different attacks do different things, that each type of melee attack does a different function, and trying to focus on mechanics. So that's like the big focus of things here. Once all these mechanics are in, then those more or less we can start building upon it, making it look prettier. Again, most of the stuff that you're going to be seeing now, especially visually, all of this is placeholder. Like, you'll notice that some characters don't even have certain animations at all. Some characters don't have breathing animations, as Waylon there is literally, dead. He's stiffer than a board. He's not even breathing.
And some of them are going to transform into stick figures as well.
Yes, those are placeholder animations until later, because go figure, Robin is our programmer and animator. So it's either one or the other. We're focusing mostly on code and mechanics, though, which is the most important thing. Animation work, Robin's a expert at. I won't let him, he won't admit to it, but he's one of the best animators on the market. He's really goddamn good at what he does. So yeah, that's that. Final Fantasy Tactics is probably a better comparison. It says Juan. Fire Emblem also has the entire permadeath thing. Our game doesn't really have a permadeath mechanic. When characters get their asses beat, they just go down. With a few concussions here and there. Pondazen gives I can't read. He donates 850 Donkey Kongs and says, Helldivers 2 thumbnail, Chatfish for the charity thingy, and the rest is Gibbs' choice. Well, currently, because you guys did an excellent job, everyone who applied for Chatfish charity actually received one. By the way, as a PSA, if you would like to get a charity Chatfish, you may apply to by just literally DMing Rapier, would be the best one to do right now, and we will try to help you get a Chatfish with our little charity program we're doing, so that everyone gets one. But very generous. Thank you very much, Pondazen. I'm going to try to read all the comments, but you guys are actually typing a lot faster than I thought. Press says, I like the combat system of CRPGs, but I don't appreciate how much stuff they make you go through to get to it. That's fair. Now, ours would be a little bit different. Genghis asks, will we get mixers, girls, girlfriend experience in dating sims? That's a cute question. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? Right now, one game at a time. Denmark funny mummy. Yep. All right. So, now that we've gotten on... Wait, did you DC or something?
Yes, my internet died.
Okay, that explains why you flickered there. Oh, wonderful. I've got a plan what to talk about in case that does happen. So, while you're here, what is the overall state of the build? Like, how are we looking in terms of mechanics? What mechanics are currently in the current build?
Well, so there's quite a bit actually, but if we start from the beginning, more or less, actually I'm not sure I set it up properly, but we can look at that later. But in terms of actual like combat mechanics, right now what we have is we have an AP system, we have a timeline up here, and the way the AP system works right now is basically every attack has an AP cost, which might not be that surprising. But moving also costs AP. Each step you take costs 1 AP. And as you can see up here at the top, you have a little timeline here. And that shows you where all of the characters are in the current timeline. And as you spend AP, that it gives you a preview where you're going to end up in the timeline. So if you move 10 steps, then that like eats up, I call them seconds, it like eats up 10 seconds in the combat turn order. And actions work the same right now. So if you have an attack that costs 6, it kind of represents that attack takes like 6 seconds to execute. And that means that characters that have more costly attacks are also slower characters. They have less, like, they get less turns in general, because that's just how it works, you know. This guy is going to be over there when he uses this. And while if you go to another character like Ria, here I put triple stab on just 2, and that's just her basic attack. I don't know if that's going to be like what it's going to cost, but that's what's in right now for the AP system. There are also attacks that can stagger you or stun you, which might push you back in this timeline. And that's a big part of what I want to try to do with this, so that you have like more strategic thinking going on, where you might want to knock people back or stun them to interrupt them from doing things, or things like that. So that's how AP works. Spells also have a similar function, where the Cyrus Gaze here costs 4, but in reality, Cyrus Gaze has like a cast time. So when you use Cyrus Gaze, this position that you're in here is actually when the spell executes. So until then, Aya is going to be standing here casting the spell.
Yep, a wind up time.
So that's yeah, exactly. So that's how spells and skills work with the AP system at the moment, at least. And there's armor. There's the armor implementation is very rudimentary right now. It's literally just like no armor, light, medium, heavy, and all that does is give you like a percentage damage reduction based on the type, and then the weapon types reduce that. So like a bludgeoning weapon is like 40% reduction on their reduction, like their armor, piercing 20, slashing none. But this is just like a placeholder system, really, that I put in place just to have it so I can just do something with it. And we have some other ideas on how to go about like how we implement armor and stuff and damage types going forward as well. So we'll see where we end up with that. Let's see. I have to refresh so I can see the chat as well. And I've also implemented a system that's very experimental that I call stability. I'm not really sure about the term yet. It could be like stability or balance or something like that. But the idea that I had with that is that one of my biggest problems with JRPGs and tactics games and whatever in general is that I just wish that there was some more depth to the mechanics in the game, and I just want to try adding more things, stuff that make you like actually have to stop and think what you're going to do for the turn, and like plan ahead, especially plan ahead. That's a big thing that I'm interested in. But I've also been watching a lot of HEMA, historical European martial arts stuff, for research and whatnot, and a lot of that involves like simply not getting hit. Like getting hit is basically you lose, more or less. And that's kind of what I want to try doing with stability, where it's like when you're high on stability, that's basically you're in balance, you're ready, you're ready to like defend yourself, you're on guard, etc. And when you're on low stability, that means that you're open, you've got openings, you're vulnerable. And I want to try to bake something in using something like that to make like certain characters and certain weapon archetypes. For example, Adanos here is set to use more of like a warhammer or a mace, some kind of blunt weapon, while Waylon, I think, uses some type of rapier or something like that. Rhea uses a short sword. So Adanos, as he's fighting with a big shield and a warhammer, the idea is that he will revolve a lot around like reducing enemy stability and keeping his own stability or other people's stability up with like maybe some kind of war cry or orders or stuff like that. At the same time, he's bonking people with his warhammer, and that's making enemies lose their stability to set them up for big attacks from other characters. And then you might have attacks that do things when enemies are at certain like stability thresholds. For example, right now what I've done is that Adanos has he has more or less a basic attack. It's a 2-hit combo with his mace that reduces the stability of the target by like 3 or something. And then he has another ability called Shield Slam. And what that does is that if the enemy is on like 1 stability or something, then they become staggered. And becoming staggered means that you get pushed back a certain amount of seconds in the timeline. And when you're staggered, that's also meant to be like a special state where, okay, now you're fully open to taking damage. And there I gave him another attack called Head Crack, where if he attacks either an enemy that is casting a spell or an enemy that is staggered, then they become stunned. But I haven't really decided exactly what stun does. Right now, it just means that you get staggered again, kind of. And you can only get staggered once until your next turn, and you can only get stunned once until your next turn.
Yep.
So that's kind of the idea.
Locking, but yeah, because we're still in the process of testing.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like the general idea. Rhea might have like she's using a short sword, so it's mostly gonna be about like poking and quick in and out attacks and stuff like that. But at the same time, she might have like some kind of overhead slashing attack that's kind of a risky move, and that's something that might take advantage of an enemy being staggered or being low on stability to be more vulnerable like that. That's the idea, at least, with the whole stability thing.
Mm-hmm. So, as far as other things go, this is some stuff that we're on the forms of what you call, I guess, experimentation for the prototyping. Now, people are probably going to notice on the right-hand side that Aya has that little thing where it says none.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, that represents how we've kind of broken down armor at the current moment. Now, we're kind of still in the, I guess, experimental stages, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not really sure
like,
on how in-depth we want to go or how not. It's really just a balance of what's fun and what reaches the point of stop being fun and is becoming more annoying.
Yeah, because like I like games that are more complex.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing you have to be careful about is, like, for example, if we wanted to have slashing armor, piercing armor, crushing armor, even at that point, then it becomes an issue of how can you really present that properly to the player in a way that isn't just like hampering his gameplay experience. And you can even go further, like should they have like fire resistance, ice, cold, lightning resistance, this kind of stuff.
Mm.
And all of those things are completely valid, but you have to really test what works, because it's not just about having this or that, or like how complex the game should be. Because there's also a huge factor of like the player actually being able to access that information in a way that keeps the game actually fun, without having to like go and click on every target to check like, oh, how much slashing damage did this guy have, how much blunt did this guy have, just to be able to decide what to do for that turn. So that's a danger that I'm really keen on avoiding, but I also want to not avoid having complexity unnecessarily as well. Like so we'll try and see what we can manage there in terms of armor types. Should armor be like percentage reduction? Should it be flat reduction? But all of these things are like very basic implementations. So armor already works. So all I really have to do there is to just change some variables here and there, and like change it from minus to percentage or multiplication or whatever. So those are like easy things. So that's just something we'll try. Yeah, we'll just try stuff like that further down, really, and see how it goes.
Yep. Because I think, as far as our game goes, one of the big things is that we don't want it to be just like a simple game, but at the same time, we don't want you to be like bombarded with like, oh god, like, because this is a fine line to balance, right? Because we do have blunt, slashing, and piercing damage types for melee weapons. Then there's obviously spells and other status effects, not including those, right? And so when you start adding certain things like that, you have to be careful where it's like, okay, all of a sudden the game goes from like fun mechanics and you're like having really cool things to it becomes formulaic, and it actually just ends up turning into rock, paper, scissors. It's like, rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, paper beats rock. And so what you run into is it's not necessarily a one-dimensional game, but it's very bland. And then the tactics start to fall out in favor of, I got to use this on that, I got to use that on that, and if I don't use any of the other abilities, they're now useless. Which is why I've been putting a greater emphasis on mechanical value for spells, as spells themselves have a lot of great deals of mechanics. We're trying to really expand and explore that. Whereas in a lot of games, video games, where the spells just don't really, it's like, okay, I throw a fireball, and it's the end of it. It might apply a status effect, but it's like, okay, well, how can we make that interesting, both in lore and in mechanics? Like, maybe it's not a fireball. For the Astrians, it's Syra's gaze, which is literally like a beam from the heavens. And so it's like, okay, that works a bit differently, mechanically and visually, but like, how does that work? Can it be like, can you draw it around the map? Was it just like, it burns that one location? Does it ignite the ground on fire? Like, what else does this? And how's that contrast to the Nafir, which obviously have a spell that's relatively equivalent, but it's also mechanically different. And theirs is the Yurikeen Firebird thing, where it's something that's like a range spell, but it can hit targets along the way, is the idea. Now, bear in mind, a lot of these are work in progress, so these are susceptible to change in the prototyping state. But we're trying to constantly be thinking outside the box in terms of spells, so that they're not just formulaic. It's not like, this is just water magic, this is just light magic, this is just that magic. It's just about making it more mechanically interesting and engaging, so that there's a great deal of tactical decision making that actually affects things. Like, what does it knock somebody over? Does it make a piece of terrain inaccessible? That creates a barrier that you can use. How does this change the actual battlescape itself?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's generally the stuff we're thinking about when it comes to a lot of these spells. How to keep it refreshing and interesting, so that each ability you use or gain access to fundamentally changes your tactics that you are employing. Because they're all part of your toolkit. And as you expand your toolkit in the game, your tactics and the things you can pull off are going to also expand, as well as some of the synergetic abilities between the characters that you'll be able to pull off.
Yeah. For me, a big emphasis is about synergy between characters, and also, like I said, just planning ahead. Like the ability to plan ahead, that you know you're going to do this with that character, and because you did that, then you know that this other character has an ability that can take advantage of that, so you can, do some big damage or stun that character, or stuff like that. That has a lot of value to me, at least. So that's what I'm looking for mostly, I would say.
Yeah.
And yeah, but just thinking. Otherwise, what I'm working on at the moment is I'm implementing targeting stuff, which is not really like super interesting, but it's like just being able to do this where you draw a
Projects.
Yeah, like it shows where you can target, it shows where the explosion of the ability is going to be, it shows you how long the range is of the spells that you're trying to use. This is what I've been working on for a while now, and it's just this morning I mostly got this working the way it should, where when you cast Cyrus Gaze, for example, right now, if I hover over these characters, it shows them as like these are going to get targeted.
Yep, they're highlighted.
But in reality, Cyrus Gaze has a cast time. So if any of these characters move, they should be able to move out of the way. And that's what I just got done this week. Just making the spells reacquire their targets when they actually execute, so that if Waylon were to move out before, he would just take the damage anyway. But
despite moving out.
So. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now it appropriately recognizes that the character moves out. But yeah, there's lots of bug stuff that Robin has to often do when it comes to figuring out what this works or that breaks. Or I remember when you were working on this targeting thing. Now currently it's still the same color, so it's kind of difficult to see. But yeah. I remember when you were selecting things and it was like not highlighting like certain squares and stuff like that, and it looked like it had holes in it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
sorts of
the idea the idea is more or less to draw like other colors where there's a character, for example, so that Waylon here, it will show yellow on all the tiles that he occupies, so that that's somewhere that you can target. Yeah, because right now it becomes a little hard, like, oh, am I targeting one tile or two tiles or whatever? And I think that's also a good segue to talk about how the tiles work, because when we started out the project, when we started working on the sprites, eventually I began to realize that just going with like a tile-based system like Final Fantasy Tactics or Disgaea or something, ended up with some really huge problems, because a character is so large that if a tile was the size of a character, the minimum, then the inside of the houses, the walls would have a minimum size of the same as a character.
Like Minecraft houses.
Yeah, exactly. So they'd become huge, and it would also introduce issues, because we intend to have larger enemy types that might take up more space as well, and there becomes a little troublesome too.
That's why we implemented the micro squares, is what we call them internally, which are just little squares.
It's nothing like groundbreaking. It's literally just that we broke up the tiles into smaller tiles so that a character can occupy multiple tiles. And the standard character occupies 2 times 2 tiles, really.
Yep.
In reality, to complicate it a bit, they actually take up 2 times 2 times 5 tiles, because the game is actually 3-dimensional in the sense that there's depth. Like, this house isn't just 2D. This is actually a 3D house that's standing here. So you can walk into the side here, and if I were to take control of one of these characters, I could walk into it and I could make the character like ascend until he like went through the roof. So the entire world is actually built kind of like a Minecraft world where everything is 3D, and that's in order to be able to like walk behind houses, walk inside houses, and also in order to like project shadows properly. So you can have characters and let's see if I can select another character here. If we take this character, you can see that he's got his shadow here on the ground. But if we walk him up to here, you can see that
it projects
shadow
like it's on
now...
the building. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's so cool. I still can't get over when you got that to work, by the way. But yeah,
that was hard.
That was a nightmare. Oh my god. But yeah, like, that's really cool, and like how the light system works in general. But the big thing is like, yeah, because the big focus with our game is environments, and so this is just a test map that Robin threw together. He's been using the same test map for a while, so you're probably used to seeing it. We'll probably draft something up that's new. We have the tools, we have the map editor, we have the technology, we can do it. It's just, it's not on the list of priorities. But yeah, because one thing we're gonna eventually have to test is elevation and elevation mechanics, because we do have multiple like buildings, and there are combat encounters throughout our game that are scripted where you have like different levels, and there's verticality in the fighting and stuff like that, and so it's going to be you're fighting through buildings and going up and into buildings and fighting out of buildings, pushing people out of things, knocking people off, or getting knocked out of things, falling onto the street, moving around, stuff like that. So it's going to be quite a bit. Hold on, we got a question. Oh my gosh. Little Polly. He says, how will characters show through buildings? Polly asks.
Well,
like a dollhouse. Show him.
Let's
watch it break right when I try to show it.
I have to restart it because it's switching from combat mode to non-combat mode like breaks the game right now. So
current bugs.
But if I place Rhea here and I then walk into this building, you can see that the front of the building kind of disappears, right?
Yep, gives away.
And if we take her out and she walks behind the building, then
the back disappears.
Roof of the building. Yeah, exactly.
So you can see where your characters are at any point, whether they're on the back of behind buildings, whether on the second floor, etc., etc.
Yeah. There's like one bug here, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just I know how to fix it. I just haven't fixed it yet. I think it's when you do this. Actually, I don't know when it is. There's a bug, but
we'll figure out.
It's not that big of a deal.
Apparently, you forgot how to trigger it. Yeah.
but yeah. So they can walk in. The buildings all consist of rooms, and I've built a generator. Like, that's why I click this little button here that can detect if there are rooms, and then it generates rooms, and then it generates buildings out of them. And that's to... It's not necessary, because you can like select an area, more or less. I don't know how to do it there. You can more or less select an area like this. I've got tools kind of like working in Photoshop or something that I've made here. I've got a fill tool, I've got a line tool, and an eraser and whatnot for the level editor. And then you can just manually set like which building it belongs to. Ideally, I should have a button that lets you like draw each building and room as like a color, so that you can see like that this building here belongs to building 1, this here is building 2, this is building 3. Just, for development purposes, right?
For the level editor.
Right. Yeah. But right now, that's pretty much that. What was I gonna say?
Yeah, sometimes it's easy to forget that Robin Man's literally building not only our game and all its mechanics, but he's also working on the level editor, which is a whole other beast on the side.
Yeah, the level editor still needs some work, but
Yeah, that's true.
I have made tools for it because
It paints.
It's important to be able to make the levels right, because see here I have a button that switches whether you're drawing horizontally or vertically. You can see it immediately.
Yep,
Generates a wall there or a shadow. It's a little bugged, but that's because I need to click this button later. But I also have an undo button here, so you can just undo all of that. Yeah. You can also redo it if you want. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, the level editor tools so far, because originally our original idea with the level editor was that we can build, the intention is to be able to build all the levels of the game inside the editor so that it's easier, and on paper, it offloads a lot of work off Robin, so Robin doesn't have to constantly be, Robin, can you tweak this level here or that? And then, but odds are, it's probably going to be a little bit like that, It's probably kind of...
Odds are I will be making the levels, but that's fine. It's one of these things like I need it anyway. Like
the tool will be useful.
I need it. Yeah, I would need it because imagine that you're trying to draw a whole map like this, and you're trying to make buildings and whatnot, and while you're like adding the roof to some building, you misclick without having like undo and redo features like that.
Chat's asking
like,
some interesting
Jesus.
questions. Is this all custom? This is insane. Oh, that's pretty insane, says Stone Age. So do you want to tell him?
Yeah.
You want to tell him like the plan for the engine thing with Unity? Feel free.
Yeah. So I am working in Unity right now. Yeah. But the reality is, it's easy to be like why aren't you using an engine, or do you have to make all of it from scratch? But the reality is like, yeah, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could work in Unity. I could use Unity's like physics system to move characters. I could use Unity's whatever. I could use Unity's editor to make maps. Unity even has a tile set system where you can draw with tiles with it. But it's kind of not that great. And it all kind of assumes that you're making a certain type of game often, especially like working in Unreal or working in Unity. A lot of it is tooled towards 3D development. And if you're doing 3D development, I think you can use tools a lot more. But when you're making 2D games, I feel like there are ways to make things easier for sure. But I'm really making an engine inside of Unity in order to be able to like make games in it, if that makes sense. So it has been taking a little while because of that. Like I've written the rendering myself. I've written all of these tools myself, and it has taken long. Like I wish it hadn't taken as long as it has, but I feel like there aren't really that many options. It's either doing it this way, or we just settle with like the roof is layer 3, and then there's like this is layer 1, and then an object can like walk behind that, and that's kind of it. More or less kind of like that. And I just wanted the engine to be able to do more than that. I wanted to have more interesting ways to generate light and shadows, and all of that. I also just kind of don't really like Unity and Unreal's like built-in systems for most things, like buttons or the physics, like really all of it. I have tried working with it, but often it kind of, I feel like it's more for prototyping. Like it depends. Like they can work for a purpose for what you want to do, but for me, I feel like I usually just run into more issues if I use them, and then you can't really solve it because it's like their proprietary function, and it's
Yep.
not, you know, it's not open source. You just don't know how it works. You can't fix it. So at that point, you just have to like write it yourself. So that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
writing all of this, the engine, writing the level editor, the well, really just all of it. Did I just crash it? I think I crashed Unity.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's crashed. You could tell because the animations just froze like they usually do. God damn. Mama Donates $2 says, looks good so far. Thanks for showing us. Yes, so I can understand why some people, if you don't watch Robin streams on his own channel. You can see the coding and all that and the whole process. Just like our art director actually streams working on the art on his own thing. I can't promote it because sometimes he draws things that are, you know, NSFW. But that's part of
the boy.
Yep, that's true. Otherwise I would. Otherwise YouTube wouldn't snap my neck. But yeah, because he streams his work too, and you can actually see a lot of what our studio is working on. I just wish I could actually promote that. But the big thing with this project and understanding it is that what you guys have been supporting since just either whether you watch, whether you like the streams, whether you just stop by and say hi occasionally, or whether you donate and contribute to helping us actually fund the studio. You're basically helping us put this together. And yeah, it is a lot of work. And what Robin does is insane. He always says, like, he doesn't... The stick figure. Oh my god, there it is. All right. They transition back to stick figures. Yeah, as you can see, there's some placeholders there.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're still working out exactly how to like visualize the combat, because
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, the reality is, it's like right now the way it works, as you can see, I think if I use the pistol here, it's gonna do it. Yeah, it kind of transitions the characters to be next to each other, and then they attack.
It's about making it faster, back. Yeah. Because
it doesn't look like amazing. I think it could be made to look better, but there are a lot of like questions, I guess, to consider to go like one way or another. So the main reasons I'm doing it the way I am right now is because, first of all, if I don't, I'll have to animate 3 times as much, right?
Yes, like 8 directions.
Every character, yeah. Well, that's not 8 directions, but
up, down, left, right, diagonally, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like we could just do it left or right, or up or down.
Yeah.
It would just look really bad.
I would never animate all 8 directions. That would be insane. But like 3 directions, up, down, and right, and then you just mirror right for left. That's like kind of doable. But even then, I think it's too much. And furthermore, there are other issues too. Like, because the way I want to design abilities and skills is for them to be more complex. So right now what I'm trying to do is like most attacks are more like a sequence. You know, it's like a if you watch boxing, like a 1-2 combo, or you know 1-2-3 and a liver shot or something like that. That it's not just one attack, it's more of a sequence, and the attacks might also have like various reaches and stuff. So the character's just standing where they're standing. For example, if you just look at the Nefir Spearman here, he's got a long spear.
It's huge.
If Rhea was standing right next to him here, just animating him stabbing her would end up looking really strangely because he would just like be stabbing all the way over here somewhere.
Yeah, missing
So
her.
that would also yes, that would also look bad. So then I'd have to think of like, should melee attacks have like minimum ranges? You know, should you not be able to use this if you're in certain ranges? Or and at that point I feel like the game is maybe becoming too convoluted.
Yep.
And that's why I kind of want to have this kind of middle ground. And then even then the next question is, if you do it more like, you know, Fire Emblem does, because Fire Emblem has a similar thing where when you attack a character, then it switches to another scene, and then the characters duke it out. You know,
Yeah.
one character attacks twice, the other guy like counters you, and then then it transitions back. To me, I always liked seeing those animations. I always thought they were cool, but it also makes me like lose track of what's happening on the map.
Because
like
it
when I
takes
come
you
back,
out of
I'm
the
like,
game.
yeah, I was like, oh shit, what was the last thing that happened? Like, I'm not really sure what was happening now. And that was something I wanted to avoid as well. There's still the option of actually like going that way where it transitions to a real scene. But it also requires drawing like full backgrounds for pretty much
Yes.
every single
Every
area
time of
as well.
type of environment. So, how do I put this in a way that Chatfish will understand? So, our game isn't set in like one area of Terrestria. It's a journey, and so the issue is that we can't just do like okay, we'll have our two characters fight each other, and then we can draw a backdrop, because then when we looked at it, it's like, okay, there's the prologue, there's chapter 1, there's chapter 2, there's chapter 3. None of these things share the same environmental artwork whatsoever. And so it's like we have to re-illustrate that each time, which would be incredibly expensive and not to mention time consuming. And so it's like, okay,
Yeah.
how can we do this in a way that, okay, if we can't do that, what's the next best way we can engineer this and that will still look good, right? And so that's what we have right now. This is a placeholder thing where you see the two characters fight. They line up in position. Obviously, it'll be snappier when it happens, but we need like a better way to transition it. But it sort of darkens the background. That way, you can see the actual like cool animation effects. So we want to make use of Robin's actual animation skills, which you are an incredible animator, and so that we're actually having really nice visual flair for when men are fighting and the women are using their spells and stuff like that. That looks really much like capturing the world that is the Mixer setting, where it's very, very weird. And so that's what we're trying to do, is come up with a compromise that captures the visual flair and the beauty of the combat, while also not taking you too far out of the game to do so. Because that's one thing with transition animations, right? Like, as a little kid, Fire Emblem wasn't really my thing, but one of the big inspirations for me as a child was this game on the Game Boy Advance called Advance Wars. It played a big role in my childhood, playing it on like the bus and stuff, going to school. And
It's the same game, by the way.
yes, same company actually too. And so that was my original inspiration for like the idea of this. Was that when I was talking to Robin when I first hired him, like, yeah, like I want to have like these things like this, and then I found out about Fire Emblem later, which is a little bit more one character on character, but our game covers a little bit more than that because we do have a warfare mode, which is way down the line, which is a bit more reminiscent of those bigger armies clashing. But the big thing is making it those animations work without having to redo them a billion times, right? Like, for example, Fallout, the classic Fallouts. You can shoot up, down, left, right, you know, and stuff like that in those tactics games. Here's one of the issues, though. If we do that, one of the problems is that, like, we have one animator. And Robin now has to animate omnidirectional, you know, like several directions. That's expensive as sin. That also is going to bloat the project. And I have to explain this. Terraria uses 8-bit sprites, right? It's like, you know, cute little sprites, right? Tiny little guys. Our sprites are huge. They're like fighting. They're almost like fighting sprites from fighting games where it's left and right directionals, and that's expensive to animate. And so it's like, okay. So if we're going to focus on capture the footage, let's use the fighting style sprites from, like, you know, the Street Fighter. Are sprites bigger? I can't remember because you're the expert on that crap.
No, it depends on which you
They're
look
about
at,
a little
but
smaller, right? if I'm right.
I think they're maybe about the same size of as like Street Fighter 3 sprites, but I'm not sure.
It's around that ballparkish.
I could be wrong.
I remember our sprites are
Yeah.
huge. Because we got a lot of comments on that when we first showed them off. Like, those are big. Those are big. For an RPG, yes.
They're quite sizable. Like most tend to lean more towards like smaller bodies, bigger heads, that kind of stuff. So there are most, I would say honestly, a lot of sprites are a lot larger than you realize for other games too. But often they lean towards that kind of art style, and that also makes them easier to make and animate. And often they only have very like simple animations with just a few frames here and there, right? I mean, there's a good reason to do that too, because that helps speed up development a lot. But
Yes.
I don't really feel like I have that big of an issue with animating like the way we have been. So I feel like it's working just fine.
I mean, the placeholder animations look really good. And they're just placeholders, that's the funny part. But, yeah. The big thing here is that once we get all the mechanics, like, neat and tidied up, then Robin's gonna focus more on, like, actually animating things. Because there's a lot of special effects and stuff that we have planned. Not just for spells, but for, like, battle scarring. Like, blood splatters and stuff like that. But right now, we don't have nothing.
There's also, you know, we're putting out more things now for Terrestria War, for example, and the reality is that all of the things that I need to make for the video game as well need to be designed. And so what we're doing there is that we are kind of multitasking by designing things for Terrestria War. We are also designing things for the video game, because
yes,
the spells, like all of that is relevant for every project that we're making. So it's just that for Terrestria War, it's a lot easier to just put it out, right?
Yep.
But it is actually relevant for everything.
So if people have been curious, because I know we've had these questions pop up before, and I can answer this one quite easily. Like, how are you guys managing the video game and the tabletop? Well, realistically, it's very much in thanks to the volunteers from the community and Baffios. If it wasn't for volunteers like Rapier, Vulpus, Mamu, and everyone else who plays the tabletop, to be brutally honest, the tabletop is not possible without you guys. It just simply isn't. It entirely exists because you guys made it possible. We don't have the budget to allocate those resources because the tabletop, believe it or not, it doesn't really have a very big budget. It has like a couple $100 and that's about it. But we've managed to make that work because the thing is, Carlos is doing concept art, and all the concept art he does designs for are all for things that are in the video game. So the Nephiric army and the Astrian army are in the video game, and I'm not going to say what chapter then because it's spoilers, but we have this thing called the warfare mode, and the warfare mode makes use of armies and battles. And so it's just providence that actually all this actually lines up because we need to get this art done anyways, and it just so happens that the tabletop can use that. And so the only thing that is the expenditure there is Baffios' model work, which is a blessing. Hence why, if you're ever wondering why the next factions are related to what they are, it's purely due to the fact that they're in the video game. We're only going to be focusing on factions that are in the video game because, again, the tabletop's budget is actually only like a couple $100. But thanks to you, you guys have made what was a couple $100 become like $1 million. In terms of like the production quality through volunteer work and all of that. So the tabletop war game exists because of you. The only thing that's going to expand its expenses down the road is when the books need to be made, because the books are going to require illustrations, and that is going to be expensive. But that is fortunately down the road, so we don't have to worry about that problem right now. So let's read some of the super stuff because that came in, and then we'll try to continue with this. This is actually taking a little. I mean, that's fine if it takes long. I didn't realize how much stuff there was to actually go through. I thought this would be a lot quicker. My mistake. Belazari donates $10, says, I looked into game dev with Unity for the whole 2 weeks as a break from money-making engineering. This stuff looks easy to start with, but the complexity seems to explode very quickly. #ScriptFund. Any comments, Mr. Programmer Boy?
I mean, the reality is programming video games is very easy. It's really easy to get into programming if you really want to. Just all you have to do is like watch like one video on YouTube to just learn it, because the reality is programming is like a few building blocks. You need to know how to write like an if statement and a for loop, and then you can make like an entire video game if you want, almost. The what makes it difficult is when you start having systems that you want to be complex. So it really boils down to kind of what you want to make. But making like a platformer or something like that or whatnot is actually very simple. So programming video games is both very easy and incredibly difficult. It just really depends on your goals, I would say.
Mm. That's true. We also have a very big donation from Little F. Pressett on PayPal for $400.
Oh, damn.
Thank you very much for your
Thanks a lot,
donation. The note says for Beefos, but I'm not sure what that necessarily means, because we've already, I think the model that was made for you, I already paid for with the resources that you guys allocated. I'm pretty sure that's already covered, along with anything else.
Maybe he just loves Beefos.
Maybe he does. I mean, to be fair, Baffio's literally owes, like, the tabletop would never have begun without him. He so happened to join, and he's an industry professional, modeler, like an actual industry professional. He's incredible. He does incredible work, and he was like, yeah, I would like to work on this project. He was interested. And talk about, Providence again. It really is down to the fact that a lot of people either make fan art in the community, like Sala did, and then we try to hire internally, meaning that we try to keep money that the Chatfish donate in the community, so that we're always hiring from the inside, right? So that we're not just, going around hiring people that don't give a damn, because we have worked with people from the industry before, but usually they're not really passionate, I guess, at least from the ones I've worked with, not to be demeaning or anything, but it just seems like it's just a job, nobody cares, and it's like, I don't like that mentality. So that's why we generally stick to people who are more excited, more interested, like Echo and the likes. Oh god, there's so... Alright, chat, try not to type too much, slow down a little bit, I gotta catch up here. So, Genghis asks, and I'll try to catch some of the things we missed, but there's so many, it's very hard to. By the way, if you are watching the VOD, and you missed this stream, that's okay. Ask your question by writing a comment. And the next time we do a programming cover stream in about a month or so plus time, because we're not going to do these every week, mostly so Robin can, get a chance to get some, stuff fixed in the meantime. But every month or 2 months or so, we're going to do one of these so that you guys can see the status of the build and as it progresses. But go ahead and leave comments and questions on this if for whatever reason we missed it or something like that, and I will try to go through and read every single one of them, and we'll address them in the next time. For VOD watchers or people who, just for whatever reason, I missed your comments because I'm not wearing my glasses, and I am close to my monitor, but it's still hard to read. So... Genghis asked something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing because I lost where that comment was, are there booby physics?
There are no booby physics, but we can try to draw some boobies if you want.
So the reality is that we don't have physics because Robin has to animate everything. So if there is characters with boobs that wiggle bobble around, it's down to...
There are indeed characters with boobs. We can confirm that.
Aya running, I would imagine that Robin's going to have to animate some jiggling. Bear in mind that our game isn't an age game. I know it's cute and funny and all, but the emphasis isn't on that. But if it makes sense, obviously, I'm sure Robin loves to animate water and fire and smoke and all that stuff too, right, Robin?
Yeah, it's great.
He loves doing it. It's his favorite thing. That's why we should come up with smoke magic, I say. But either way... Just looks at me with the biggest bags and the rest. I'm tired, boss. Alright, let's see.
I'm sure we'll find some fire and smoke to animate eventually. Don't worry.
You can't put it off forever. All right, Splunk Jam has been around for 32 months. Says some really good work there, gents. Yes. To be fair, this is all Robin. All I do is maybe like, Robin, what if we add like this thing? Robin, what if we do this? And then Robin just looks at me with the biggest bags under his eyes. He's like, please. Please.
Honestly, most of the time, when it comes to the video game, I'm kind of just like putting things in, and then, I kind of run it by Kyle later and see like, how do you feel about this?
Surprise!
That's how I've been designing. That's how I've been designing the characters.
The timeline mechanic. Surprise! Surprise!
The timeline needs more work too. Like, it's not.
To be
really
fair,
done.
that's actually incredibly useful as a tool, though, because the timeline system literally helps you forecast things. Because a lot of our spells, there are rituals that require the characters to complete in order to cast them, and they're for enemies and bosses. This is an incredibly useful tool because now you can see, okay, how much time do I have to work with, and you can plan and think. Use your big chatfish brains to come up with a strategy. At least I hope you're going to use that. If you don't, you just press buttons, see what happens.
Yeah. So what I want to have added here is that I want, because I haven't implemented any AI yet, but I want the AI to kind of plan ahead, and I want the AI to be like, I'm planning on targeting, like, this guy is planning on targeting Wayland. And I want, when you get to certain points in the timeline, like maybe it's when they're 5 seconds away, maybe it's when they're 3 seconds away, whatever, I want it to show his plan.
Yep,
and
because
when
you're
he's
getting
at like
closer,
a certain,
you can realize what they're setting up for.
And when he's at a certain point, I want it to show exactly what he's planning. And this is because if you don't have this, it's really difficult to have defensive functions like defending, parrying, countering, this kind of stuff, because it just becomes like a guessing game. Like, are you going to guess that the enemy is going to attack you, or are you going to attack the enemy?
It allows
But
you to plan
if
your
you know
strategy
that
out,
they're
too.
going to attack, if you know that they're going to attack, then
The benefits of delaying, by the way, because delay in a lot of games, it's useful, but here, because of how the timeline system works, like, delaying is actually a incredibly powerful tool.
The main reason it's even here is because otherwise, if you want the characters to have like synergy and stuff, if you can't delay your character, then the synergy becomes random. Because it's like, this character needs to do something before this character does something, but this character is currently like 1 second ahead of the other character in time, so now it just doesn't work. And then the system just breaks. So that's why you need to be able to delay your character a bit.
Oh, and I see some people in chat like, I have too many questions. Well, feel free to ask them. Like, if you don't ask them, it's gonna be hard to answer them.
Well, if you don't want to ask all of your questions now, you are always free to come by my streams.
Yes.
When I program, and ask me there. Now, I stream early, like European mornings mostly. I have been thinking about maybe doing like one late, like more American time programming stream a week or something. But we'll see. But yeah, are there any more donos that we haven't gone through?
Yes. Yeah, I'm scrolling down. Mythical Fool's been a member for 33 months. Thank you for your long-term support. Splunk Jam and Mythical. Very much appreciated. Couldn't do this without you. He says many head pads.
Thank you, Splunky. Thank you, Mythical. Sorry.
Yeah, you better be. Thanks. We're never going to get through these. Many head pats for Rubinsky. Even tough. I don't always agree with his coding. It's though. He meant to say though. I was like, I was wondering, maybe I was just not thinking about that. Well, you can agree with his coding or disagree with his coding all you want. When I look at it, all I see is a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper that has a bunch of like little brackets and stuff, and I don't know what that means. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So that's my understanding.
No coder agrees with another coder on how to code.
Yes,
That's how it works.
we've had many programmers attempt to help us with this project, and what often ends up happening is one of the most strangest things I've ever seen in my life. And from the other indie dudes I talked to, nobody had this issue either. Thanks, Robin. This is a uniquely you thing. Every time we get a programmer who comes to help and volunteer, they'll be like, I want to help, I really think your guys' project's cool. I was like, okay, well, let's see what happens. And then they join the team, they look at Robin's code, and then they contact me and they go like, I really would like to help, but like Robin's like on a whole other level than me, and I can't keep up with what that is. And that's been almost consistently universal with you.
Well, the reality is that that's just honestly like any
You're also making
project.
like your own basically like fork of the damn engine though. So.
It's well, I'm not actually making a fork. I'm kind of I'm just writing my own engine in Unity. I'm just using Unity like a platform.
As a framework, yeah.
The reality is that even if you had experienced programmers come in, I would still basically have to train them.
Yeah, because they have to work on catching up.
And it's like, yeah, and that's just the reality for like any job, any project. So
yep. I mean, that goes with any company.
It's really hard to understand other people's code.
Yeah, you want to go work for DICE, you got to learn how the Frostbite engine works, You're not going to be using Unreal, you're going to be using the Frostbite engine. And so that's just the nature of it.
Exactly.
We just don't have a budget called a training budget. It's, we have what chat gives us, and that's like enough to develop what we have. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Because training people is, as you can imagine, chat, incredibly expensive. Now, Moogie says for 6 shekels, and yes, I'm not kidding, it's 6 shekels, I think Kibs should be turned into Labubu. Hashtag Labubu. I don't know what Labubu is. I don't know if that's some sort of Moogie thing or what that means, but sure. I don't know what that means. Labubu yourself.
Don't worry about it, but you probably will be turned into one.
Okay, gosh. Okay, let's keep scrolling down. There's so many things here that it's kind of hard to see which are questions because you guys don't use question marks, I've noticed. So I'm like looking at the end of each sentence for a question mark, but I just see like nothing, not even a period. Not even period. Too hard for Chatfish. Oh, the 400 went to the drunk fund. Okay, well that answers that question. The physics aren't exclusive to H-tie games. I know, it was a joke. Gosh darn it, you little autistic Chatfish.
Sudden Cringe asks, is he writing his own shaders then? That's gotta be fun. Yeah, I have my own shader here.
Oh no, he's gonna show it. Okay, here we go. Text, wow.
It's
Yes, he did write all of his own stuff.
5,000 lines there. So the game is rendered using a compute shader. For those who actually understand what this means, the game is rendered using a compute shader that just draws to a texture, and then I just put that texture on the screen, and that's it. So it's just using ray marching to march through the world until it finds a tile. Then it just reads the tile, checks what texture it should draw at what coordinate, and then it draws that. And that's the gist of it. And then it also has ray marching for light casting and shadow casting, which is also in here, which is also why it's so long.
He wrote a lot of things. Like I said, by the end of this project, we'll have our own proprietary engine. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, that is literally the idea.
That's actually the plan.
And the idea is to move from Unity, but that's always
gradual.
That's something I say as a plan, because it's something that I'm not sure if it will actually be entirely possible. At least right now, it really depends on if because I've been looking at Monogame, and it depends on if that actually supports everything I'm doing. If it does, then as long as it's not way too difficult, it's something I want to do, because I don't actually really like working in Unity. But it's something that we'll see. But if we have to stay with Unity, that will work too.
Even though a lot of people on the team are a little iffy, because if those remember that big drama and controversy that happened a while back.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's why we're kind of uncomfortable with it,
That's why, because I don't want to base everything on like that kind of shaky ground, right?
Unstable, yeah.
Yeah, that's the concern.
Gregors donates £5, says not an H game, but all Illumine have a stat about how hot they are. Heat. Gibbs Choice and Robin, have you heard rumors about certain bullets? This mother, I can't say the word on YouTube, keeps asking questions about, can Star Steel be made into bullets? And it's like, okay, you take a precious resource that's not easily malleable, that takes a lot of work to even get it to shape into anything, and then you want to turn it into just throwaway bullets and munitions? Are you kidding me? It's like, yeah, no, I want to do that. Chatfish.
But I mean, technically,
yes, you could make Star Steel bullets if that's what you want to know. Why you would do that is beyond me. You take this very incredibly precious and rare resource and you turn it into bullets. Tell you what, when the pen and paper system out, you can tell me how much so our entire campaign was about just producing Star Steel bullets. All right, you know what? Fine, go ahead, turn all of it into bullets. See what I care.
you could also just like collect a bunch of Star Steel swords and like armor pieces and stuff, just shove it into a cannon, and you've got like a Star Steel shotgun, man.
Just a boom, loves it. Oh my God, Star Steel. Oh, why would you just do that? It's like, it's not like a precious heirloom or anything. Whatever. It's not like a precious... It's just...
I'm sure it'll survive the blast. So like,
it'll survive the blast. That's not the issue. It's just now it's all over the goddamn place. All right. Beat Chatfish. All right. So let's see. Advanced AI doesn't sell games, to be honest. That's true. Nobody cares. Popular games have very basic AI. Well, that is kind of true. I mean, but at the same time, the most memorable games are the games with AI that's somewhat interesting to interact with, personally. But yes, you are right when you're talking about common denominators. Most people don't give a damn. Most people will play a game, and if the AI shoots back at them, that's good enough.
Most of the time, yeah.
Which is... not everybody appreciates like AI taking cover or taking advantage of the mechanics of the game. But, yeah. Oh, well, Jano66 donates 25 Polish bucks and says, that's just like some artists telling me to use vectors. Others calling them mentally ill for it. Yes, SF, fit, drunk. Vectors are one of those things you don't have to use. In fact, very few artists on my team actually make use of vectors. But some of them do. I think Palu is the biggest proponent of vectors. He's also, because he uses vectors, he has an incredibly lightning speed workflow where he smacks out really good art pieces in like an hour or two. Versus some of my other artists, which are more painterly, take a little bit longer. But there are pluses and negatives, and they have their own unique style because of it. The reality, in my opinion, is that there is no right answer. It's what works for you. And that's kind of what you have to do when it comes to being an artist.
I agree. And same thing with programming and whatnot. It's just, you just got to figure out what works.
Yep. If you like using vectors, all more power to you. But, you know, Show doesn't use vectors at all. She takes like a good while to do her paintings. But they also look just as good. So different methods, different approaches. There. Now the little guy's dropping his question. Fine. I'll drop my question. Oh, dig it. Okay, I'm assuming this says, will the game have grind aspects, also known as skirmish, or the game story will be linear, or as some people use to call it, force progression? So this is a question that we actually talked about internally. And again, it's one of those workshop things. Sorry, I had a scratch on my foot. But the big thing is that our game, at least this game in particular, Mixer's Legends of Terrestria, you're not going to be going around grinding. That's not really a thing. It's very much narrative and character driven. So there's a story and characters want to do something, and you're not going to catch Rhea going around helping random farmers collect bear asses for whatever reason. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, You will have influence over certain aspects when the game narratively presents certain choices that lead down different paths, but those choices will reflect the character you're playing as. You're not making a random blank slate character. All the characters you are swapping perspectives of, because our game does swap through about 3 or so perspectives, you'll be making decisions based on that character's psyche, meaning that what kind of decisions would they make in that instance. And you'll be role-playing as those characters, because you are playing a role, and the role is you're playing either Nidus or Rhea or, whoever the third person is, or Aya or whatever, you're playing as them. You're not playing as yourself in this game. And so you need to be able to put yourself in those shoes and think about, okay, what would this character do, right? You're not making John Terrestria. I know Bino's made a lot of fan art, but that John Terrestria game, is on the horizon. Maybe one day in the future. I do like the idea of blank slate characters, but not for this particular game, especially when we're establishing a franchise and an IP.
Yeah, like the story and writing is very character centric, and it's all pre-made characters, so it just kind of makes a little less sense in that kind of context to do just like a lot of wandering around and just random nonsense things and exploring and stuff like that. But furthermore, it also, from a development perspective, I would say it's also kind of easier to not make like huge hubs and stuff like that. And I think it's just a bit more realistic to have like that more like direct kind of approach for the story and for the game as a whole, especially as the first game. But I would absolutely love making more of like a Baldur's Gate 2, more like open kind of thing, further down the line. But I also think that when you're writing the story for something like that, I feel like you have to like take that in mind, what the game is going to be like as well when you're writing a story for something like that.
Yeah. And the big thing here is that when we drafted out the game, because we're not going to talk about too much about the story itself. That'll be saved for later, I think. But if you have questions about like the philosophy on like the design of the game, like what does it have, like if Chatfish want to know about the word hub, do we have them or do we not have them? You can ask stuff like that. But when it comes to the design philosophy of the game overall, it's based on a story that I had been crafting for a very, very, very long time, since I was a little kid. And as I grew up, I kept working on it, tweaking it, working on it, tweaking it. And so it's set in that universe. And there is room for a lot of custom things in that universe. Like it's quite expansive. Some people tell me that's the biggest thing they've ever seen, which is a compliment. But the reality is that it's very focused, the story we're doing for this game, on these characters. We are very much open to the idea, though, down the road, of letting you more explore it freely. I just think the best way to expand this franchise is to pick one of the strongest story points in this particular era of where the game is set, and focus and hone in on that very strong note, so that you can really get brought into the world, right? Because you're going to see a lot of things and learn a lot about the characters, motivations, and cultures, and just overall world building that's going to give you a very vivid picture of the setting. And then down the road, yeah, I do want to do some more stuff with exploration, but that's not for this particular project. Not to mention, it's far easier to construct a game that's more on what we call a narrative progression path, or more linear, if you will, because that way we can actually create more focused and tailored and handcrafted experiences with higher and greater focus on quality. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on. Very, very high quality set pieces and crafted encounters that will have a great deal of choice to them, in the sense that the choices you made either narratively might affect some of the gameplay elements, or the choices of how you build your characters and stuff like that, which are again questions that you guys can ask, because that's stuff we've actually been working on quite a bit. Now, Gregors donates £5. It says, Chumba's and mine strategy has succeeded. Near change Kib. And now I know Kib. I don't really think they would make good cost-effective bullets. Well, yes, I'm glad that you have come to your senses and realize how silly that is. Also, take care, Fuzzy. Let's see, what else? Oh my god, some people asking question marks at the end of the sentences. But it's memes! It's Blake! He says, will your game have a Garfield collab? No, probably not. I don't think I want to do collabs, period. Because even if we were to do collabs, A, it wouldn't make sense. B, we're a small indie project. Even organizing something like that would be literally a nightmare. Let alone even getting that to go off. Because, again, our poll, non-existent. So, and lastly, I want to go back and harken back to I want the setting to be in-universe. I don't want any collaborative efforts whatsoever. No other settings whatsoever. Period. I just don't like collabs at all when it comes to my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And as much as I love Garfield, I just don't think he would fit in the setting.
Yeah. Collabs just don't make any sense at all, actually. They just don't make any. But that's a serious answer to, I know, a joking question, but for those who were curious. The general policy is to stay in lore and in setting and to be sincere with the universe. The game's not going to make light of itself. Nor will it make light of you for spending time in it. It's going to take itself completely seriously, for better or for worse. But yes. Let's see. Can Illuminate be used to animate and move inanimate objects? Yes, they can. To answer that question... So are you going to... I already answered that. Answered that. As long as the game don't have 30 to 40 characters like your average FE Fire Emblem wannabe, and you end up caring about 10 to 12 of them. So that is actually an important question to ask. All characters in the current iteration of what we have right now... so how do I put this? You know how in Mass Effect you have like a party of like 6 to 8 or whatever, or maybe even 12 characters, and you can bring like only 2 of them? Our game is kind of similar, where it's like, okay, there's like maybe, 6 to 8, maybe 12-ish characters in total per party. You will be bringing all of them, and the encounters will be tailored for those. We thought about a while of like, you only bring like a couple of them, but that just doesn't make any sense narratively. It just seems stupid. It's like, yeah, let's just let those 3, princesses waddle off on their own. Oh, that's real smart. That's real smart. That makes no sense whatsoever for what kind of story we're telling. And so, no, you will be controlling all of them and any combat encounter going forward. Now, if there's like narrative points where groups like get separated for whatever reason, that might happen, but you are not going to be keeping characters separate. In the case of like, Nidus, you'll be leveraging the entire Astrian Imperial Army. So it's not going to be like a background thing or background element like, oh, where are those characters? They're off doing their own thing. No, they're not. They're right next to you. So no Bikini Nezra? What are you talking about? We got bikini artwork already done. Indio did that, thanks to, I believe it was Toddley. He had that commissioned. I believe there's a second beach art piece. I don't know if that was Toddley that also commissioned it, but it's apparently entering development. Apparently. I'm learning things. I know, it's weird. You guys commissioned a summer art piece, when fall's about to start. Chatfish, I tell you, weirdest guys ever.
Gotta hold on to summer as long as we can.
Yep, summer, keep you warm through the winter, gotcha. But will the game have bikini skins? Extra cosmetics would be, how do I put this? They're not a priority. If we have budgetary time and I ask Robin, like, how does your soul feel about reanimating several hundred things? Yes. I'm not thinking that cosmetics will probably be a thing, mostly due to the nature of our game. So the real quick answer to this is that when Robin and I talked about this, we have cutscenes that happen in our game, but they happen in game, if that makes sense. So that means if Rhea in like, let's say like a tower falls, okay, that's animated. The tower's animated falling, and Rhea has a unique animation where she runs and she like, dodges or gets out of the way or whatever. That animation is made for that scene, and Robin has to animate that by hand. And so if there's a, bikini, it's not like we can swap it. Like, Rhea and Aya aren't templates. They are very different. Right, Robin? Like, how do I explain this? No character shares the same body. You can't just, like, slap clothes on them. You could by hand, but you have to manually reanimate every single frame. Does that kind of explain it, right, Robin?
Yeah.
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 I mean, how would you feel about having to reanimate every single frame? Like 1,000 times over. Oh my god, help you.
Yeah, that would be pretty bad.
That would be pretty bad. I imagine that would be the point in which Robin would stop working for us. That's a lot of animations. Oh yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda, like. Should have started animating them naked, then animate the quotes over them. Well, Robin, how do you feel about, animating feature characters naked? He just looks at me with the biggest bags under his eyes. He's like, why you do this to me?
I mean, if that's what you want.
Chat, we are not spending money on that. This game will actually become a forever project if we do that. We're not doing that. We're gonna focus on getting this game, like, making tangible progress so we can actually, get to the point where we can actually release the prologue as a demo or something. Oh my goodness. Oh, Jesus. You're crazy, Chatfish. Let the modders do that. Yeah, you know what? Good point. Where was it? Somebody actually asked this. Genghis asks, how moddable will the game be? Well, as the programmer, how moddable do you think it will be?
The honest answer is that there are no plans to really make anything, like, moddable in that sense. Like, not like Skyrim is where you have like a mod button and you can just load in plugins and stuff like that. That's not a plan at all. But as beyond that, it's kind of like most games are moddable, whether they are planned to be moddable or not, right?
This so happened to be, yeah.
Yeah, just by the fact that you have, like, data files where, like, all of the sprites are stored and stuff like that. Like, I'm not gonna like try to, like, lock or encrypt them more than necessary or anything like that.
Yep.
So, like, if people want to open them and they want to, like, replace and edit all the sprites and whatnot, they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to, like, editing and modding, like, abilities and stuff like this, it really kind of depends, I guess. I honestly don't really have that much experience when it comes to modding. I know that modding Unity code is quite accessible. Like, you can almost, like, load up a Unity project and you like get the code and you can just change it and, like, recode it almost. But like, when it comes to abilities and how characters work and stuff like this, it's all just kind of coded. It's just written in code how it works. So being able to, like, edit stuff like that from files or whatnot, it's probably not going to be very straightforward at all. But it's not like I'm against modding. I just don't think it makes sense to put effort into programming the game to be moddable, since it's not like an open world exploration game or anything like that, right? Like,
yep,
it's
more
just
linear.
a story game.
How I'm expecting this to kind of work out, to be frank, is that people might tweak levels or things like that in the same way people mod Halo. And that's kind of how that would work. Because if you look at Halo MCC, none of the mods, like, some of the mods do add, like, custom missions and all that, right? And they do their own dialogue and stuff like that. Even, like, adding on, like, things like that. Yeah, I mean, in theory, people can do that. But I'm not going to have, like, and I've always said this, I'm not going to have little Binskers go and, like, be like, all right, so this game is like Skyrim, so we need to sell it on the fact that it's moddable. This game is being sold on the fact that it's a good damn game. And that's what we're aiming for. Our focus is on making a great game, and that the game will sell itself, not that other people need to sell our product for us, because I think that that is kind of like a crutch. And if modding and a modding scene starts to expand around our setting, we will, you know, be helpful in any way we can, but we only have limited resources. We will not be, what's the word, impairing this in any way. So if modders start, like, let's say a modding community starts cropping up around it, if they have any like questions or feedback, or even they need access to concept art, I'd be more than willing to even give them answers to lore questions if they, for some whatever reason, start making like a little side quests and stuff like that. Whatever, that kind of stuff, any support there, more support than anyone else does on the market. But bear in mind, we are a little indie team, and we do have a crowdsourced budget. We have to make sure that we're spending chat's money appropriately and on the correct things. Like 90% of the money goes towards the video game production. A sliver of it goes towards the tabletop's production. The tabletop production, like I've said before, it may look like it has a lot more going for it, but it's actually you guys that are making that possible. It's you. It's Mamu, it's Rapier, it's Vulpus. Or I said Vulpus twice. Gregor's.
He's just that important.
Good job. You know, he's actually the MVP. Sorry, Rapier. He's like, oh. But yeah, so like, yeah, so that's like the big thing. That's where the focus is and stuff like that. Well, yeah, of course, Monster. If the game is good, which I hope it is, I will recommend people to buy it. Yeah. I mean, if the game isn't good, it's not good, but we're not going to make a bad game. So the big thing here is that when it comes to how we're making this game, the general philosophy is slow and steady as she goes, Captain. We will be taking our time with each element and making sure that each element is done to the absolute best of our abilities. We're not going to be rushing things out. We tried that initially back before when we had programmers that knew what they're doing. Before I got Robin on programming, because Robin was our animator, and he's just like looking over his shoulder, like, "Hey, you guys know what you're doing over there?" And back then, we thought we had things under control. But that was many years ago. That was like like 2018, 2019. That was a while ago. But yeah,
I don't remember. Yeah, it was a while ago.
Something
about it.
It was a long time ago. And so that's like the general focus. The focus is on that. The focus is on making a great experience and focusing on that. And just like with the tabletop, we're pretty open to feedback and critique and criticism. So eventually, when we're in a state in which this combat prototype can be released to the general public for playtesting, or the closed testing, however we handle it when we get to that stage, more than like welcome to feedback and stuff like that, and like what works, what doesn't, things like that. We do have a vision for our game, and we're going to stick to our vision, but we're going to keep you guys along the journey every step of the way. But it is very much a vision that we have, and we're going to stay true to our vision, so we're not going to deviate. Vulpus donates €5 and says, "Not fair to poor Choomba. He's the MVP. Choomba's choice." #fit, #SF. Thank you for the donation. Very generous. Look at that. Vulpus coming to his defense. What about the Chatfish fishing minigame? That is something that I do think we're going to put in the game. Like that, no matter how we slice it. But that is like at the bottom of the list of priorities. We are focusing primarily on combat mechanics right now and the combat prototype. The combat prototype, once completed with all the systems and etc., then will be prettied up, and then, you know, that's when we're going to focus more on, like, I don't know. Once it's pretty, then you can, like, see a lot more of that. But, like, yeah, that's quite a ways down the road of, like, non-priorities. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the plan right now that I have, at least, is I'm gonna work on the combat prototype and get that working.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be fully complete. Actually, there are some things that still need work.
Yep.
But it will be able to function in terms of all of the, you know, action types, all of the AoE types. The characters should have like their intended like functions programmed in, because I do intend for characters to have like unique functionality as well, when it makes sense. Like Adanos is mostly like a knight. He's like a big melee fighter, so he might not really have that many like unique resources or special mechanics. He might be more, but you know, we might think of something. My idea for Waylon, for example, is that he has like a limited amount of pistols, and that's just how he works every encounter. He starts with 3 pistols, and that's a resource that he has that I want to try to make him like it affects the rest of the character, or at least that's the idea I've been going with, but which is open to change. But other characters have similar things, like when characters cast spells, they gain heat. That's how spells work here. They gain heat, which is a mechanic that if you accumulate too much of it, it becomes harmful. But Rhea can channel this heat into her Starsteel blade to superheat it, and that's like her kind of mechanic there. And I want the characters should have stuff like that, things that make them unique, and that's stuff that should be in the combat prototype. Hopefully other like smaller like environmental mechanics too, like maybe breaking down barrels, having walls, whatever. But what needs to be done after that is there's some work that still needs to be done on like the rendering side of the game, because right now, while everything works in 3D and the tiles work and all of that just fine, there are some minor issues with like having staircases and elevation, walking up on elevation and stuff like this, that still has some kinks that I need to fix. I know how to fix them. It's just, it's not really relevant right now. So I'm just going to focus on getting all of the combat mechanics functioning, and then I'll look at that. But the reality is I'm honestly pretty close, I feel like. Like, I feel like I've been banging my head against the back-end code just forever, like literally forever. And it's really hard to say like how close you are to like then the light see
At the end of the tunnel.
seeing the end of the tunnel. Yeah. But because it's like, yeah, I only need to finish AoE targeting, right? Kind of, and then I can start implementing skills. But when you start doing that, you're like, oh, I finished implementing like the blast AoE and the point-based AoE and the single target and whatnot, and then you start implementing skills again, and then immediately you get to another skill and you're like, wait, this is like a line-based AoE, and then you have to go back
and do it all over.
And then you realize, because you're going back and because this works like slightly differently, you're like, wait, like the core system here needs also to be reworked a little bit in order to fit this in. And then it becomes like this whole like circle. So that's why it's really hard to really say. But like once targeting is in, I feel like it should be smooth sailing almost going forward, because then it should more or less just be implementing skills. And I have been, like I've already implemented a lot of new abilities here for Adanos. Like I implemented all of these skills. He doesn't have barrier, he can't use that.
Yep,
but
I know.
It was just for testing. But I implemented all of this in like just a few days, and then I got to Shields Up, which is meant to be like this point-based AoE, and you can see like it's broken still.
Yep. Very much.
And it's like you just, okay, everything works, and then shit, this works slightly differently. You just have to.
And now it's broken.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always funny listening to Robin stream while I'm writing the lore and stuff, and like you'll occasionally hear like this big sigh. Why isn't that working? Why isn't that working?
Yeah.
The long pause and the long stare he does, the 1,000-yard stare. That's something that was working perfectly fine. Just broke.
Polly says, don't forget ring AoE. And yes, that's actually true. We haven't really made any particular spells or functions or abilities yet that actually used more like specialized or custom AoE shapes, right? But that could be a thing, and I have made a system for that. And because that's so special, it's like let's say you have an explosion that's like in the shape of a cross or something.
Oh,
that has to
the
be an
shapes.
entirely different. Yeah, that has to be like an entirely different system.
Yes.
Because, and I have made that. It's there and it kind of works, I think.
We hope.
but it, yeah. So
yeah, there are gonna
when it
be
comes
stuff
to just
like that. Oh boy.
when it comes to just like targeting and stuff, it has been actually a lot of work. A lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, to answer that question, yes, there are spells like that. Spells that how to put it? I don't really want to reveal too many of the spells that we have behind closed doors, mostly because my biggest worry with revealing stuff a little bit too soon is that you might get attached to some things if I show you something. But then it's like we try it and it's like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Like this kind of ruins something. And so that's why I kind of don't tell you about all the spells we have planned. Only the ones where it's like super duper like, yep, that's going to be in there. Cyra's Gaze, Blinding Flash, blah, 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 the easy peasy lemon squeezy. The only thing I told you about that's a little bit kind of on the iffy table is the European Firebird. But, you know, that's part of the thing. I don't tell you about everything because if you get attached to something and it's like, it didn't really work out. It made the game kind of ass, so we need to get rid of it. Then some people might be a little upsetty spaghetti about it because like, I like that spell. It's like, yeah, we did too, but it's bad. Makes game poop.
Yeah. And yeah, because stuff like that is really tricky to figure out. You kind of almost have to have all the pieces there to really be able to tell, like, okay, this doesn't actually work when all the moving pieces are assembled.
Yep, it sounds great on paper, but in practice, it's absolute garbage. We've seen this happen before. Yeah. I can't remember with what. It was actually, I think, some sort of art piece, actually. It wasn't really a game design thing. It was a visual design for a faction we were going for. Where it's like, nope, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Doesn't fit. It doesn't feel like it's part of the setting. Doesn't feel like it's mixers. Doesn't feel weird and otherworldly. And so one mechanic that Robin recently implemented was the stability mechanic, which is something we've been talking about for a while. It's been on the list of things to do. And it's one of those mechanics that's very much based on HEMA, like we talked about earlier. And it's something that I think would be really, 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 really cool. Because I think it would fit this like a glove. Because the whole thing about our setting is kind of like, yes, it's got magic and stuff in it. But the magic is super hard-coded and has a lot of rules for how it works. And so does every culture and religion. So it's kind of like it is high fantasy, technically, but it's very much fantasy with rules. Gods bound by rules is the general thought here. And there are a lot of rules and laws and regulations. Just like, ooh, that sort of like construct
taxation.
That sort of construct the entire setting, right? And so they adhere to that, and we're very respectful to our own stuff here. So it's part of what makes the setting interesting. But the big thing that's dangerous is that when you're making stuff, you got to make sure it fits both mechanically and with the actual, lore. Because the lore is also something that you have to take into account. And that's why the stability mechanic is such an interesting thing, because it plays into that whole, we're going for kind of like a fantasy realism, like it's stylized, but it's sensical. It's not mindless. Like Rhea, look at her. She's basically naked. So is Aya. Like when no armor whatsoever. And the big thing is trying to make the combat system reflect that. Right? They take a hit. It's not really a good idea. It's bad, right? You don't want that to happen. People are like water balloons. They get a couple pokes and they're sad. They're not going to be wiggling anymore. So it's all about not getting hit. And that's the idea. The stability mechanic is being able to be stable and control your zone. so that you're in control. And losing stability means that the enemy can exploit vulnerabilities. That's when the danger arises. So it's all about balancing that. I'm hopeful that the stability mechanic actually works, because there's a lot of things that I want to experiment with Robin that we have to talk about, like how does it work for plate characters, you know, like fully armored knights. Like Aranos is pretty plated up, but there's characters that are even more armored than he is that are just completely like, you know, fully encased in plate. And Rob and I have talked about this many times. We've talked about it on the team, but plate is kind of like the end all be all. Like, it's impervious. How do you deal with that? How do we reflect that in game? You know, is it just damage reduction when you smack him? Like, okay, 75% damage reduction. Or is it like, okay, you know, do you have to like knock him over? Or like, how does that work? Like, how do you kill him? You know?
Mm.
And so that's the general idea. And that's what the stability mechanic is about. It's about opening up that tool to really make the combat reflect that level of depth. And that's what the different attacks are. That's why we don't have a basic attack in our game. Mostly because it doesn't, the way we're going for, because we're kind of based on HEMA, yeah, there is like a, you know, you can swing your sword at somebody, right? But like, it's a tactic. You're not just swinging your sword at them. It's not just like you're smacking your sword against their sword just for shits and giggles. You're trying to position yourself and getting the game to reflect that you have, because some of these abilities here, you'll notice like -2 with the red sword. That ability uses your stability because you're exposing yourself, you're positioning, you're overexerting yourself, you're now putting yourself in a vulnerable state. And there are poses and stances that will help you gain control of yourself and your area, gain command of yourself. And that's important. I don't know. I'm pretty excited about that whole system. Stoked about it.
Yeah, I want to try it out more too. The idea for me is kind of like right now attacks they can both change the target's stability, but they can also affect your stability. So a character like Aranos, he might be, when he's more in close combat with like many enemies, maybe you want to use options that are more about keeping his own stability up, like play more defensively so he can actually stand there and hold off the enemy to keep them off the rest of your party. And then when there are like bigger enemies, he has abilities that are more about reducing the opponent's stability. And attacks, like I said before, I'm planning them to be kind of like maneuvers, so that they might consist of several attacks. And that's kind of like a combo attack. That's kind of how I view it. And those are generally like, because they have more hits, they're generally weaker in general, or each individual hit is weaker, but they do more damage in total. And that makes them more powerful versus less armored enemies as well. And when you're fighting something that's more heavily armored, it would be more about getting their stability down so that you can use big, heavy hitting attacks and deal like fatal blows that way. In theory.
Oh yeah, I mean, 90% of the stuff is like, ooh, it's on paper, it sounds so cool. Or like when I look at the designs of our game, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so fucking like nuts. Like nobody's ever seen this before. But it's like, it's scary because now we're implementing the mechanics. Like, okay, like how many of these are gonna stick the landing? Because they've been on paper for such a long time. And yeah, did we run some tests on Excel, like to see how they worked? Quite a while ago, like a year ago, and they seemed to be interesting on Excel, like doing like some, okay, let's pretend a combat encounter. Okay, that works like on paper. Does it actually work though in the game? Is that actually going to translate, and is that going to be fun? Because the big thing with our game is that we're doing a lot of things here. When I first recruited Rob into the project, I remember I was like, I want to do something with this project. I remember telling you about it. I'm like, I don't want to just make like a game just like every other game. We could play it safe and we could just do the same thing, regurgitate the same mechanics. We're making the Mixers project about experimentation. We're going to take risks, and these are going to be big risks. We're going to be trying things that nobody else has tried, in ways that are risky. Like, this is bold. And if this pays off, it's going to be great. And if it doesn't, it might not work out. But that's why we're in the prototyping stage. Because again, the one benefit of being an indie and being crowdsourced is that we have the ability to try to experiment. Whereas AAAs and AA's have harsh deadlines that kind of constrict their freedoms to experiment, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. We can take one advantage that we have and take those risks. Let's try to push the envelope forward. Let's do what nobody else wants to do. Let's take some risks. And that's what we're doing. Now, we've got some things. Possum's been a member for 44 months as a disciple of Squeck. Don't forget, Possums, that is a paid membership. You can redeem that for hashtags. You don't forget, every month you guys are a member, whether you're patron or subscribe star, you can redeem those for, like, stuff. We offer that. And that's why I want to mention it. He says, I was hoping for a solo Robin stream. Oh, well. Well, he has his own channel he streams on, too. Just they want him to take over my channel? Is that it? He's like, yeah, it's Robin's channel.
That's exactly what he said. He says, I don't want to watch Robin on his channel. I want to watch him on Kib's.
Oh my god, this is like this weird thing, like, I want to watch him on this channel. Why? Because the novelty factor. I see how it is. Well, I'll tell you what, if I get really sick, I'm going to make him take over. That's our plan anyways. Well, I almost did that for the Stalker 2 streams, if you didn't know. I thought I was actually going to die. Oh my god. I never had such a hard time breathing in my entire life. That was scary. Let's hope to God that never happens again.
You were super sick. I remember that.
Oh my god. I genuinely was worried I wasn't going to wake up because I was like I remember waking up being like struggling to breathe. It was scary. Ugh. Ugh. It was like my lungs were filled with things. It was weird. Terrible. Oh, don't remember that. Ah.
Filled with chatfish.
Yeah, gross little guys in there wriggling. Screaming. Next question. Gregors asks, how many armor items or armor types do you plan to have? The helmet, greaves, shin guards, etc. of many other games. Now, from what I remember, this is a conversation Rob and I had eons ago. But I don't think we were going to factor in left arm, right arm, and left leg, right leg, or head and torso into our combat calcs, if I remember right. I thought, and this has been ages since we talked about this, but I'm almost 90% confident, 99.9.999%, that we're just classifying the armor type as the whole body, what they're wearing, based on what kind of type of soldier they are. We're not doing like a legs, arms thing.
Yeah, but I guess it also depends on what Gregors is referring to here. If you mean like equipment, or if you mean like hit areas on enemies, because enemies and characters are only supposed to be like their armor type, not have like whether they have a helmet or not, or whether they have whatever. It's more like either we go with like none, light, medium, heavy, and it's abstracted like that, or we go with it's more detailed and it's like full plate, lamellar, chain, leather, like that, and it's more nuanced. But as we said earlier, that's something that we're gonna have to decide on later, depending on if it just makes the game convoluted or not.
Yes. We will be conducting experiments, because Rob and I talked about this yesterday. We will be experimenting with lamellar, chainmail, and plate, and gambesons, and the likes. We're going to try it, and we're going to see how it works. If it works out good, excellent. That would be ideal. I hope it does. But if it doesn't, shit. We're just going to have to go back to abstracting it. And so that's going to be the bigger focus there. But yeah, when it comes to like the modularity of the human body, we're not going to focus on that. It's more so about control of the human space. Hence why we have things like stability. It's focusing less about like, oh, my shin or leg or right. Like, yeah, are there attacks that could like like hamstring attacks where you attack the hamstring of a leg and it now a character's hamstrung, and now they can't move very effectively? Yes. There will be stuff like that in terms of attacks and abilities. We don't really need to have that as like a separate thing. Just like how, if you notice our combat system, we talked about this before, but there's not really ways to heal magically in our setting. And that was intentional, not only for lore reasons, but also design reasons. It just happens they coincide, thank God. And that's purely down to the fact that you need to be very careful in your encounters. The game isn't about damage sponges. It's not about how spongy is my character. It's about how do I make sure my character doesn't get hit. He may be wearing plate, he may have shields, but that's there to protect him when everything else fails. Every time you get struck in HEMA, that's not good, even if you're wearing armor. Yes, your armor's there to protect you. No, you shouldn't want your opponent to be getting in strikes. What that means is that you are vulnerable and you do not have control of your space. And if you don't have control, that's not good. That means the enemy is executing attacks that are getting through your defense. That's not good.
Yeah.
Armor is there to catch when they slip past your defense so that you're not struck and you don't start bleeding. Because as you bleed, like anything, you're going to start getting exhausted. You're going to be worn down, fatiguing. You're going to lose vitality as you bleed out. And the more cuts you have, the less effective your body will be because less blood is getting oxygen to where it needs to be. You know? You're losing blood, and slowly you're dying. That's not good. You don't want to be struck. And that's the general feeling about it. Dying is bad. Yeah, go figure. Don't do that. Let us see. Toddley says, so light, medium, and heavy. For now, but we're going to be experimenting with more stuff. Whenever Robin's ready for the next stage of experiments.
I'm the one who initially went with just like none, light, medium, and heavy. And the way that worked was none, like every step is like 20% extra damage reduction. So 0, none is 0, light 20, medium 40, heavy 60, and a blunt attack reduces 40, and a piercing attack reduces 20, and slashing none. So slashing would be more powerful against like light and no armor. That was just like the idea, and the entire reason I went with that was because I just wanted it to not be overcomplicated. But then Kibbs approached me and talked about trying to make it more complex as well. And now I'm kind of leaning more towards that. But for me, it really just boils down to whether the implementation actually makes sense, like we've said. So hopefully it will work out, because that's kind of what I want. But we will see.
Yeah, because the big thing is that in Terrestria, in lore at least, Kib complicates things, yes, I know. So whenever Robin's sitting there, it's like, yeah, this seems like this is pretty simple. I'm like, hey, like, we need to talk about something. Now, this was like years ago, by the way. We haven't really made any new mechanics since then. The last major thing we did was Robin implemented the time thing as a what we call surprise mechanic for Kibbs. You had mentioned it before. I'm joking, but I was initially like, I don't know about that timeline business. I don't know about... But the last big thing was I had to prepare this massive speech to the dev team because we have this policy internally where no building, no inflating the game, right? And we had this thing called the naval combat system. Now, when I drafted out the story originally, there was a lot of, and there still is a lot of aquatic things that happen in our story. Like there's a lot of boat travel time. But the reality is that after I'd done extensive research on reading and writing and stuff like that, and I looked at the story, I'm like, oh my God, there's a character in our story who is kind of just left to the side, and it's just background stuff. And I'm like, I'm committing that carnal sin that I set out to avoid, which is if there's really cool like wars and battles and stuff, let's make it playable. Let's make it part of the game. Why should it be a background thing? Like, oh, this really cool battle happened. Oh yeah? Where? Where? And so we had this naval combat system, and the naval combat system had to be brutally honest, it felt like it was kind of shoehorned into the game, and this was about several years ago. And I had to be like, Sal, I need to talk to you about a special project. This stays between you and me. This is before we went full-time on YouTube, so this was my free spending money. And I could take risks with my own money because, it's my money. I work for it, And so I could do that. And so I was like, we're going to draft up this thing. It's going to be called the Warfare mode. And I want to talk the team into this because I want to get rid of the naval combat mode because it's honestly kind of worthless, in my opinion. It's going to be used maybe a few times throughout the game, and it really doesn't add anything to the story. It kind of feels like it's like we're making a whole new combat system. And so when I drafted the warfare system, it was the entire principle was utilizing the base mechanical systems of the basic combat system, but abstracting it with visuals and art so that it looks different, but it's actually the same combat system with a couple different mechanics like morale and stuff like that. And that's about it. There's a few more things than that, but it's more or less just like a slightly modified version of the base combat system, but with a lot more visual flair, so that you can see these cool battles and things happen, and then play as one of the characters that has influence in those, and actually play with that. And that was way, way more interesting. Because it's like, wow, now I can explore this other character, and you can see a different part of the story from another lens. That gave a great deal of stuff there. So yeah, when we did stuff like that, we usually did something where it's like, if something had to replace something, it had to be leagues better. And so when I presented the team, while I am the director, I could just say, we're doing this because I want it done. I have that power. But I generally want everybody to be on board. And so the goal is to trick everybody into thinking that they like it too. And that worked out incredibly well because everybody's like, yeah, that's really cool. We want to see that instead. And I'm like, nice. Worked just as planned.
Mm-hmm.
That was my big contribution, I would say.
Good work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Todd says timeline is just a more complicated turn-based. It's not too crazy if you think about it. Yeah, I mean,
it isn't. It's just I was initially when he presented it to me, I was initially a little reluctant to come around to it. I'm like, but what does it add? It's like, okay, we already have it. It's already happening. And part of me is like, shouldn't the mystery be in not knowing? And it's like, well, think about it, Gibbs. What if 5 seconds before an enemy attacks in the timeline, because we have an AP system that represents time and seconds, as you get closer, you can actually predict what enemies are going to do because you can foreshadow their attacks. I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting, because a lot of our game and our tabletop war game, because I don't really participate with the overall things, but as the director, initially I came up with a lot of the initial systems. For example, in the tabletop war game, it's just like the video game. I wanted to respect the video game in a lot of ways because I want it to not be different too much. And the video game is very much themed after chess. I know, before anybody gives me this crap, yes, I did play chess a lot as a kid because I did a lot of tourneys and stuff. And one thing I liked about chess quite a bit was that one player makes a move. Wonderful. Thank you, Google, for crashing. One player makes a move, right? And they move a piece, and then you have to think about what you're doing next. And each action you take has a considerable deal of value. I had played recently, at that point, a game called Warhammer 40k Tabletop, which many of you are probably aware of. That game doesn't really... I complain about that. I don't like games where one player can just move everything. I get why they do it. It's easier to do. But I friggin' hate that. I just can't stand it. I like the fact that, okay, I make a move, that's a big deal. Think about what you're going to do next. Are you going to put me on the back pedal, or do I have control of the board? How is this going to be? And it's play by play by play, right? And this creates an insane amount of intensity. I know probably a lot of you guys look at chessboard and probably don't think this is applicable, but when you're playing those high-level tournaments, each action you take is incredibly stressful. And a part of that is what's fun about that. And so it's like, okay, you move your bishop there, and now you're putting that rook in danger, right? What does that mean for him? Is he going to try to get the rook out of danger? But if he moves his rook out of danger, now you can exploit the fact that you have an open opportunity to move another piece up in support and get more control of the board away from your opponent, and basically start hemming him into a corner. and basically putting him on the back pedal and taking away basically pieces of the board, as in what he has, like bishops or rooks or whatever. And so the entire concept of that was kind of what inspired me into the tactics mindset of like what I liked about like Advance Wars. Advance Wars is kind of like that too, but it had a bit more mechanics because at that time I was sick to death of chess. But I really like the idea of tactics games where it's like each piece you move is exciting and interesting because what it does tells like a completely different story. And Robin's timeline mechanic, all it did was expand that. Because initially, like, I was like, I don't really see it. Like, but then I'm like, yeah, no, spells have wind-up time. And so now you can see that with bosses, like, okay, here's where they are. This is what they're going to be doing. You have X amount of time to try to stop that from happening or deal with it in a way. And that's what makes delay have a bit more value, stuff like that, etc., etc. Did you play against Tom Howard? No. He's considerably older than me. Are you telling me he's my nemesis? But yeah, that's one of the big inspirations for like, you know, interplay between you go, then go, he goes, then they go, then he goes, then they go. And that's why we don't have it, because it used to be initially even in the video game, everybody went and then the other opponent went. But the problem is that just made alpha striking, like, and then you just nuke that one guy down and he's gone. It's like, it's not as tactical. It removes the tactical flair. You need a bit of back and forth.
Yeah, it becomes a bit more nuanced when there's a timeline like this.
So, what are the questions the Chatfish have currently about the game? Because remember, we have Robin in here. Now, bear in mind, if your questions were missed and you're watching the VOD, you can leave a comment and we'll answer them in the next stream if you'd like it to be in the next stream of this. If not, you can also go to Robin's channel, which he's linked on my channel homepage at the very bottom. There's a list of all the people that I have linked there. You can like click on that Robin channel, subscribe to him, and he streams in the morning, and you can ask him literally directly about like coding or more nuanced questions with like the programming, how the renders, why he was a madman and decided to make a shader, you know. And he can go in detail all day long about that.
And I will try to not leak things as much as possible.
What do you mean by leak things? Now you're making me worried here. What are you talking about leaking? Obviously not story stuff.
No, of course not.
Yeah. So there's nothing to leak then, is there? Oh, I guess... See, chat, you didn't ask any interesting questions. You know what? I'm going to do it for you. So, Robin.
Yeah.
Let's ask something interesting. Outside the box thinking. Chatfish, take a page from me. How is, like, character progression going to, like, work? Is it going to be, like, just skill trees? Is it going to be just, like, you have to dedicate yourself to one path, or?
Well, we don't know yet. That's the reality, but...
God damn it, we talked about
this. Yes.
Technically, yes, but I know.
But what we said was we don't really know yet. We have ideas and thoughts. Like, I really want the characters to be capable of being customized. Like, I want Rhea to be able to be customized into being like more of a caster. Maybe she should be a bit more capable of being in melee. Maybe she should be more nimble. Maybe, you know, I want you to be able to customize her. And same thing with Aya and the other characters. Maybe Aya, you want her to be more of a support character. Maybe you want her to be, you want the buffs to last longer. Maybe you want her to have more AoEs, more spells. Maybe you even want to focus on like certain spells. So we'll just have to think of a way to do this. And right now it's more, you know, some kind of talent tree, that kind of stuff. But I don't really want to have like capstones. I want it to be more like you get a certain amount of points throughout the game, and you can distribute that on your characters in order to bolster them or change how they work in some manner. How that's going to be tied to like specific skills and stuff, I'm not sure. Or if it's going to be more general stuff, that's something we're gonna have to look at and design further down the line. But for me, when it comes to RPGs, what's really important for me is that I can change the characters in some manner, right? And customize them and turn them into what I want them to be. That's what I enjoy. I like making character archetypes and like fulfilling class fantasies, that kind of stuff. Like having some kind of hybrid magic knight or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I want to see. But we have to look into how we're going to introduce these talent points, or how they're going to be awarded and when. And yeah, so that's the core, like what we want out of that, I think, is kind of clear, but exactly how the details are going to look like is still very, very much undecided, I would say.
Yes, we're going to be experimenting. The big thing that I remember that I personally want to see out of this, and this is what we've been basically gearing towards. Yeah, Aya there are different like schools of thoughts that you can build Aya into, but there's no restrictions between each school, if that makes sense. Or school is not the correct word. Different branching paths. Because Aya is a celestial priestess. I almost said temptress. Oh my god. But she's a celestial priestess. And what that means is that the celestial priesthood has various spells and abilities, ranging from being very artillery focused, very summoned focused, very support focused. Just like Rhea, as a celestial templar, has combat frontline support, more ranged focus, as well as other like sort of more melee oriented focused hybridization there. But one thing we want to do, and one thing I want to see out of this, is that we're not going to be having it restrict you. There's no capstones, so you can go down any path you want and create the character like class hybrid you want out of that. So they can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you can sort of move points around however you want. I don't want to create like in, let's say, World of Warcraft, there's there's Unholy, Blood, and Frost. And once you commit, you just have to do that one to get to the capstone thing. Nope, that doesn't exist in ours. There's no capstones. You can literally spec out most of Aya's in support, and then she has like 2 like really big ultimate like combat spells, and that's just how she's built. Or mix and match of this and that. That's the entire idea here. More creativity, more control for your toolbox and how you want to do it, less restrictive. If it so happens that, some characters might be a little overpowered, as long as the game is fun. That's the big thing here. Is it fun?
The reality is, when it comes to characters being over or underpowered, because the way we're currently planning on having like the entire party be present in all fights, that means that characters can have disproportionate power.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to pick this character because he's better than another character. You can have characters that are more interesting, and just a character that's just more powerful than everyone else. Yeah. And that's just his theme, really,
He is just very powerful. Like, Aranos, he's a Tempori. A Tempori is just a normal human. Yeah, he's got, plate and like a shield and a mace, and that's not as powerful as like Aya and Rhea's magic, but you don't have to not bring him. You're going to bring him all the time. He's not going to abandon his liege's side. He's going to literally be there every step of the way. You don't have characters, what we call slipping through your fingers, where it's like, in a lot of games where it's like, oh, do I bring this companion or that companion? You'll be bringing them all. Every combat encounter is going to be tailored, because it's linear, to, like, by this point, you're going to have Aranos, Waylon, Aya, Rhea, Nezra, and, like, maybe 3 other characters in your party. So all the combat encounters are designed with that in mind. They're going to have that in mind. You're not going to be leaving characters behind. You're not going to be bringing them, not bringing them along. They're going to be with you every step of the way. And this is universal for the entire game, so that you have them all along the way. we're also doing what I call case-by-case basis design, meaning that you're not going to run into formulaic things where it's like, oh, this character has a loyalty quest. If I don't complete it, they're going to blow their brains out. No. You don't have to do that for every single character. That's stupid. It's case by case. Every character is unique, just like every zone you go to is unique. You might be influencing some nation's politics when you're spending some time in one nation and influencing. And in another, you don't at all. Because guess what? They're not going through turmoil and you don't matter to them. You don't matter. The other nation may care because they might have some history with you. This nation over here doesn't give two shits about you. They have no... They're not going to let you anywhere near anything because they don't like you. Because they might not like women. Like, there are some nations on Terrestria that are very differently thinking. And so because they are... What Rhea said, they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn at all. And so each section will be different. So don't expect that when we do release the prologue, which is down the road, and yes, we're working on the story for it right now. The details, remember, we've already finished the main story, but we're working on assets for it now. When we do finish that, bear in mind that the prologue will be nothing like Chapter 1, and Chapter 2 is definitely not similar to Chapter 1. Just like Chapter 3 is different from Chapter 1. It's like they're all contained in their own thing. And so there's not like Mass Effect 2 where you have to do the loyalty missions in order to do a suicide mission. That's just not a thing. Each character is different, and their story will be advancing as the story goes forward. And we're going to try our best to make sure that their stories advance with the parties as a whole. Not that your characters and your companion characters stop being characters after you do their side quests. A lot of games, BioWare, games that I really admire and like, or the classic Fallouts, you recruit the side character, he has maybe a quest or something, and then he never says a damn thing again. He might have some like throwaway lines of commentary, but that's about it. Our characters we're going to try to keep them a lot more involved with the story because we're taking advantage of the linearity of the story. And so they're going to be much more active in the story and interactions with the characters that you're playing as. And so you're not going to see, like, Celeste sitting in a corner, staring at you and, not doing anything as she plots, your demise. She plots your demise.
Why would she do that?
I don't know. She's just weird. Little freak. Frederick says, based. I don't know what he's saying that to. Well, polymath.
In general, we're pretty based.
JD says, I always get the feeling that a lot of RPGs make throwaway party members because they ran out of ideas for unique combat or skill ideas. So when it comes to the parties that we are making, because you do pop between 3 perspectives, there are technically 3 parties, but one is more prevalent than the other, and there's one that's more of like a background thing. I'm not going to say any more than that. All the characters are made to be very interesting in terms of mechanics and their story and what they have to offer to the story and their opinions and what they will do. There are no characters that are like, how do I put it, that we just tacked on. If it's like, if the party size ends up being like all 12 or all 11, then that's how big it'll be. If it turns out some of those characters are not interesting or fun or don't add anything, we're just not going to make them. It's just a waste of time. And so if the party's like 6 or 7 people, it's 6 or 7 people. If it's 10 or 12, it's 10 or 12. There will be points in the game, this has been asked before, in which, there are allies that will fight alongside you for certain story parts. How I intend to do it now, I don't like the idea of an allied AI director, because normally that just doesn't work out in a lot of games. How I envision this working out is you will assume direct control of them. And you will just control allied forces.
It's one of those things. We'll have to see how it feels for each scenario. Because while I do agree, like,
it's just really bad.
Neutral units like going in and
they just get murdered
and just throwing themselves off a ledge and stuff. It's absolutely the worst. Absolutely. But there's also the danger of like ending up with like 20 units.
Yes.
That you have to move.
We have simultaneous turns as well for the NPC. So the NPC will move things simultaneously. If 2 units, like let's say those spearmen match up before the next action, they will take their actions at the same time. This is because
As much as it's doable.
yeah, as much as doable.
As much as
Obviously,
it's
the
doable.
combat animation, but if it's like movement, so that you're not sitting there like, oh my god, those savages are taking forever because they have 30 dudes. The goal is to cut down on that. Skippable animations and stuff like that will be a thing, so that you don't have to sit there and twiddle your thumbs, looking at the ceiling, looking at your phone, be like, video game, please respect my time. Everything is skippable. If you don't want to watch it, if you don't want to read it, click, 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 right through it. You know, just mash through it. You don't need to. The game is built with the intention of respecting your time, so that if you are like, you had to reload a section because you made a decision that you didn't like for whatever reason. Like, I really don't like the fact that I went down that path. I want to go a different way, and so you reload back, and then you go a different way. You'll just be able to fast forward through the dialogue to get back to where you were. Bada bing, bada bam. And so that's the general focus there. When it comes to multi-faction fighting, there is a couple of instances in the plot where this does happen, where technically there are what I call people that aren't on your side. You will not be subsuming direct control of them. No. Because that doesn't make any sense. They're still your enemy. But yes, multi-faction fighting does happen in our story in a couple of instances. It can happen based on certain things or your involvement. And that will result in you controlling your party, and there might be another faction fighting another faction. And you'll be able to take advantage of that multi-faction fighting and do stuff with it. Part of the decision-making and the narrative aspect. Bear in mind that the narrative is tied to the gameplay, so some narrative decisions the player make will affect the game. But not all, mind you. Only certain ones. Jano donates 25 post bucks. It says, Celestial Temptress Aya art. Which art slave will do it? SF fit. Dang. Well, there's a new art fund started by Jano the Horny. And there you go, chat. And thank you for your very generous donation. Also, great job, chat. I think we're... Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure if we caught up to today's goal or not. I think we're on today's goal. We caught up from yesterday's goal. I don't really remember, chat. I'm kind of all over the place. But good job regardless for making another daily goal. Good job.
Good job.
I'm thinking about our game, and it's a lot to switch around. Will there be any sort of gamble magics? Unfortunately, the best I can do to describe the idea is similar to Setzer from Final Fantasy VI, with the slots ability and some basic super crits. I don't know what he's referencing, but I'm going to trust that you do, Rob, because I don't really know a lot about Final Fantasy.
Yeah, so in Final Fantasy VI, Setzer has he has a special ability that lets him. It's called Slot, and it basically just opens up a slot machine on the screen. And when you pull it, it depends on what ends up on the slot machine, what happens.
Okay.
But I think that reference is
That's
kind
like
of
extreme.
extreme.
Yeah.
I think he's just wondering more about
like a randomness.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
When it comes to our game, I wasn't a big fan of RNG. I want the player's decisions to carry higher impact than random chance. So your ability to think clever should be rewarded and not punished. And so there's a very big emphasis in our game, mechanically and design principle, and this goes for... I know the tabletop war game, there's dice, so it's always going to have RNG, right? But in the video game, it's more focused on your decision-making. And so you make smart calls, you're going to be rewarded for making smart decisions. Now, obviously, there's going to be some aspect of randomness with certain things, but to what degree, we're kind of making sure that it's a smaller degree, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Like, when it comes to things like evasion, for example, a character being able to, fully evade an attack, it's not really something I have seen any reason to think about it, but the way I've always looked at it is that it's something that's more like a special ability of a certain creature or enemy or whatever, that's just a part of their kit, maybe. Maybe they just have a 20% chance to evade. Everyone else doesn't. That's kind of how it works. But yeah, otherwise, generally speaking, things are less random and more deterministic. But everything is more about synergy and planning things between turns and setting up for big hits and that kind of stuff. But also counterplay. Like if an enemy is closing in on somebody, maybe you cast a barrier spell on them. Maybe one of your characters can like stagger them or interrupt them or I don't know, shoot them in the face with a gun and then they
Don't
die.
say that. Don't say the line. I know why you did that. That upsets me. Ugh, shoot them. You know why. We talked about it in the dev server. I was lamenting to Robin about having to play Andromeda in that stupid scene where he's like, he's pretty pissed off, probably because I shot him in the face. Oh, God.
That's not why I said it, but sure.
I felt like it was a jab at me. I feel like you're attacking me. You're attacking me. Oh, God.
No, I was referring to the fact that Waylon has 3 pistols.
Yes, he does. He does indeed have 3 pistols. He can technically shoot people in their face, but I wouldn't call that. How about the torso? No, chat, stop. Chat, no. Oh, there they go. Being autistic again.
What bullets do you use then? That's a very good question.
You know what? Who said that?
Frederick.
Frederick's gonna be beaten. There we go. Everything is a... Oh, my God. That hurt me. Alright, so that struck deep. Alright, chat, we don't need to do that on this channel. Okay, was there any other question I missed? You could have blah, 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 skipping, yeah. Those are suggestions. Suggestions are important, by the way. Yeah, you know what? Fine, I'll read it. I feel bad because I only read part of it. You could have the allies just keeping some of the enemies at bay off screen if it starts getting big, and have us play the role that turn the tide to win. Yeah, possibly. I mean, but generally speaking, I kind of want to keep the combat encounters kind of large, if that makes sense. Like, they're large by a lot of these game standards in terms of how it works. Like, yeah, like if we talk about Fallout's like 1 and 2 is like, there's rooms and buildings, but they don't really matter in sense of like their choke points, and that's kind of it. Our goal here is to try to implement a way that they're a bit more interactive. Like maybe you can set fire to some things. Maybe you can, break a certain section or something. Now, granted, each set piece is handcrafted, but there's a lot more interplay with the environment. Now, that's going to be down to each environment having that built in there. If you'll notice, by the way, a lot of games throughout their development history will have certain set pieces, especially in the beginning, be a lot more interactable, and then it falls off as the game goes on. This is down to the fact that usually budget, time constraints, and other things come into that, and they sort of front-load things. I don't want to really do that with our game, as I imagine you don't want us to do that with either. So we're going to have to build each set, handcraft it, and that's going to take a lot of time. I'm remembering working on the prologue set pieces and how much work there is there that we have to still do. There's a lot. And how none of that's recyclable makes that a lot of work for poor Robin. You're going to have to do a lot of work, Robin. Like chapter 1 to chapter 2 environmentally has very few to almost no recyclables. So yeah.
There's a lot of work?
Chapter 3 doesn't use anything that Chapter 1 or 2 uses, or the prologue. And you're going to notice that this is a trend going forward with each section of our game. But this is what we call the case-by-case method of development. Because we have crowdsourcing, we can keep that high-level focus on each set. And so each set should be fun. I want you guys to be like having memorable moments about talking and sharing it with each other, but I really enjoyed that one temple battle that we did because of all the cool stuff inside the temple. And the other guy's like, no, like my favorite was that one bridge fight where there were certain parts of the bridge that you could like deal with, and like there was a whole like thing with it being interactable. I'm not gonna say anything more there, there's spoilers, but you know what I mean. And that's the big thing that I want you guys to remember and focus on. Like, each set was really unique and really had great interplay with the combat systems and mechanics. And so, yeah, when Robin talks about, modability and why modability, we're not going to hamper it in any way. But because we're crafting everything handcrafted, set by set and character by character, yeah, in theory, you could do an incredible amount of stuff. But you're going to have to be doing the same amount of work that we did. And kudos to those who are bold and brave enough to try. But bear in mind that a lot of those sets, what makes them special is the fact that they're a great deal scripted. Like, if that pillar is toppleable and you can collapse it and it can fall on people and crush them, we had to... Robin... I feel so bad because I'm, like, throwing that out there. But Robin's got to, like... He's the guy who's got to animate it. Like, he's got to make it happen. It's up to him. And if there's another pillar that's collapsible later in the game, that has to be custom animated because that's a different culture's pillar. Do you think Astrian pillars look like Gurukar pillars that look like, you know, Galayan pillars? No. No. Genghis asks, how much to put a single star steel bullet in the game? We're not going to do that kind of payment stuff. While it'd be cute and all, letting chat buy things into the game's development would be a very bad idea. It would bloat the project tremendously. Like, for example, we allow people to buy custom characters for the tabletop, and you can make them so that they're lore accurate, relatively, so that, yeah, your characters relatively fit into the setting. But that's a lot of work, and that's also incredibly expensive. Presset and Vulpes bought theirs. Vulpes just started paying for it. And it's a multi-phase process. That involves me, that involves Baffios, that involves Lycanfish, and has to have our art director sign off on things. It ain't easy being cheesy, chat bros. That's how it has to be done. But yeah, if there's any final questions, feel free to ask them now. Robin, do you have anything you'd like to say about the game's code or mechanics that we haven't covered?
Not necessarily. I don't think so. Not that I can think of. I mean, we have items. The idea there is basically that items would be equipables. It's not, you know, if you're used to like Final Fantasy or Baldur's Gate that you have like 40 potions in your inventory. It would be more like you have 3 potions, and that's like something you can equip on your characters, kind of like abilities that you can spread around in a more custom manner, in like a kind of like common abilities if you look at it that way. That was the idea there, really. Otherwise, I'm not sure. Polly is very, very intent on finding out whether there will be different types of shots for Wayland's pistols. I will initially say probably not.
Are you waiting for me to say anything here? Because there's a pause there. So when it comes to different ammunition type, you will know that Illumine stuff does interplay with technology quite a bit, chat. As for those of you who've been following what we've been working on lately, you know that technology and Illumine and Lune and all that stuff, they're interchangeable in reality. Wayland is not an Illumine. He is a Tempori of Novarian descent. And by his clothes, you can obviously tell he's Galayan. But when it comes to munitions, there weren't a lot of special munitions at this point in history. I mean, yes, there were, but no, there weren't, if that makes sense. Like, these are matchlock weapons that we're kind of dealing with. The general idea is you put a ball and you ram it down behind, powder into the barrel, and then you have an ignition, which is usually the burning little rope that will then ignite it, causing it to explode, and then launches the projectile out of the barrel, right? The barrels themselves aren't rifled, so as the ball moves through the barrel, it bounces a little bit, like a little bit, mind you, but that causes the ball to exit and kind of fly off, not entirely straight either, which, can lead to various degrees of accuracy. So as far as their technology, like that's where they're at gunpowder wise. It's not like rifling's not really a thing for the most part. It's very primitive in terms of their understanding. So they're not quite sure as a people and as civilizations how to perfect that, and so it's usually just an iron ball, generally speaking. Now, yeah, other different types of black powder weapons, yes. Other like things like blunderbusses and stuff like that have a bunch of like crap rammed down it and act as sort of like a shotgun, yes. There are various types of black powder weapons. Yes. Varying degrees of different advancement between different sites. Some have them on sticks with little barrels at the end. They're more primitive. Some don't have them at all. Yes, and yes, and yes. But there's not like different types of munition like crazily.
What I will say is, just ignoring lore for a second. the way I like envision Wayland's character, I would say it wouldn't make sense to be like switching ammo types in his pistols, because
he preloads them.
They're matchlocks, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not even flintlock. Like he has to free light them, and so it's all prepped. Yeah. It's all prepped before battle. So it wouldn't make any real sense for him to do anything like that. But if within lore it made any sense for him to have any other types of bullets, that could be for sure something that could be like a talent for him to change, like what types of bullets he's using in his pistols. Maybe he even straps on another pistol or something like that. Like he gets another pistol, or you know, that's the kind of stuff that Wayland could maybe have as talents. Who knows? Yeah, it's just an idea.
Oh no, that definitely makes sense. The big thing is that in combat, Wayland's not going to be really reloading his matchlocks. Now, I think we could make an option that he can, but like reloading in this time period, it took a while, chat. It wasn't something you could do very quickly. And when you got like a bunch of savages bearing down on you with angry spears and stuff like that and bows, and they're rushing you, you're going to have to make some decisions. I'm going to put it that way. Because any matchlock weaponry, you're going to find is very, very potent, but its big drawback is that it takes like a couple turns to reload some of that stuff, even for like well-trained veterans, right? Even in under duress, it takes like what, like oh god, I don't have the math in my head anymore about how long it on average takes to reload a matchlock, but it's like a minute, right? It's like the idea of the Minutemen, right? That's not really matchlock; those are muskets, but you get my point, right? And so they gotta light the wick, you know, for the rope. They gotta then, you know, get the black powder down. Then they gotta get the barrel. They gotta ram the ball down there, pack it in tight. Then they gotta, you know, take position and aim. Like it's not fast. It's not fast in the slightest. And when you have things that are in a setting that are fast, like spear beaks and stuff like that, you're not gonna have time to reload. And if you do have time to reload, then, well, I guess you're doing really good, because the enemy's getting really massacred in that cases. Or that, or you're utilizing defenses, or you're inside a building and using a choke point well and stuff like that. And I guess in those cases, yeah, that would make sense. But yeah, Wayland having to reload is not something that you're going to want to do. Like, on the back of her belt, you can see her bobbing up and down there behind her waist. There is a matchlock pistol that she has as well. She also has one. Firearms are not very common for party members. You know, only a few of them have it. Wayland has 3. It's a big deal, by the way. Aya having 1 is not too surprising. She's a princess, and she's also a priestess. But yeah, you don't find too often people with firearms. Firearms are still in that kind of early state. They're not reliable yet. Obviously, firearm technology will advance, and our timeline isn't static. So eventually, yeah, they will advance as society. But in the period where we're set is called 1022 AE. Firearms are still relatively young as far as their existence. They haven't been around that long. And so they're still primitive. Like the idea of the, for example, the ring for the bayonet that goes around the end of a musket hasn't really been conceptualized yet. Nor has like the idea of a plug bayonet for this point. And so, you know, you just smack them with the butt of the gun because the big wooden knob. But most characters, you'll notice, carry sidearms. What is the sidearm in this period? A sword. A sword is the trusty, reliable sidearm. It has been for centuries and centuries and centuries. And so often you'll see a lot of characters carrying around a sidearm. The sidearm is the sword. It's not really meant for combat. I mean, you don't want to be caught out with it because a spear is like dangerous, right? Because a spear's longer, pokier, dangerous. But swords are, you know, sidearms. Let's see. Oh, good. I don't want to read what English wrote. English is just evil. He's always criminally wrong on everything, and he's trying to catch me up. Seki Joke says, so now we sound the drums of war. That's true. All right. I think that's more or less every question kind of covered for the most part, I think. Do you see anything I'm missing?
No, I mean, I think we've covered more or less everything.
Okay, good. All right, I think that kind of wraps up this much longer meeting that we were talking. We were originally aiming for like 40 minutes to an hour tops, and we kind of exceeded that. But I think now that you're brought up to speed, I think the next one will be a lot more condensed because it'll be mostly focusing on just what we've done so far. Unless people have new questions in that regard. For story questions and all that, which I see chat trying to pile on, we're not going to extend this. You can ask that when we do a discussion where I'll just talk about the story, and you can ask questions about the story. It's always lovely because 90% of the questions are like, I can't answer that. I can't answer that. I can't answer that. Can't answer that. It's like, what happened at the end? I can't answer that. Like, I don't know why you asked that, but I can't answer that. Chatfish, I swear to God. But yeah, so we're going to raid into the next stream, which is going to be some Helldivers 2. Thanks for stopping by and asking questions about the progress of the game. Remember to check out Robin's channel. He streams it twice a week at the very least, every week. So you can see it. It's normally in the earlier parts of the morning, way earlier than when we stream. So it might be difficult to catch, but you can always catch the VODs. And you can see the overall status of the game and the progress it's making. And this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for your guys' donations, because that's how I pay this guy. That's how I keep him working. So thank you again for your generous donations. Thank you again for catching up to yesterday's goal and working on today's goal. It's only thanks to you guys that we've been able to make this stuff that you're looking at here. And if it wasn't for you guys, well, this wouldn't be here. So thank you very much, chat, and have a fantastic day. We'll see you in the next stream.